Nedlac Lamini, health and safety procedures, Nedlac Lamini, Nedlac Lamini, health and safety procedures. Nedlac, thank you very much.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the hotel, we greet you all. My name is Pio. On behalf of the hotel and management, I'm here to present to you security and safety briefing, and it stands as follows. During the duration of your event, there can be situations that may require everyone to vacate the premises. Situations such as bomb threat, terrorist attack, fire, and others. Everyone will have to use the escape doors which are visibly marked. The escape doors will lead you to routes which eventually leads you to the assembly points. Our assembly points, one is courtyard, which is next to us. The second one is Maslow, which is also the next door to us. In the processes of evacuation, the hotel employees who are trained and certified in the hotel evacuation procedures will direct and assist you on how to go out of the building. Within our neighborhood, there is a fire department along Linden Street, Morningside Clinic, which we are not going to use. We have the medical room opposite this venue. However, be rest assured that our employees who are first aiders and fire marshals are always ready to assist when called upon. We are not expecting any fire drill today, but we had one last week. Smoking areas is located at the ballroom terrace and the restaurant terrace. In terms of hygiene, bathrooms are located on our level. Should there be any overflow, the delegates are advised to make use of bathroom located at lobby area. Lastly, most part of the hotel is under CCTV surveillance 24 hours a day, mainly for the purposes of crime and prevention and safety for all. I thank you.
Thank you very much. Nobuntu, I'm going to ask that we keep the doors closed, because once they are open, you can hear the noise from the people that are outside. So as people go in and out, I think those doors should actually remain closed. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, good morning, and thank you very much for joining us here today. I'm going to go through the people that we need to acknowledge, starting first with the Minister of Employment and Labor, Minister Nomakosazana Meth, the former DTIC Minister, Minister Ibrahim Patel, Deputy Minister of DTIC, Zugo Kodlimpi, Deputy Minister of Labor, Ntutugo Sibia, Deputy Minister of Labor, Phumzile Mgcina, Chairperson of the Portfolio Committee on Employment and Labor, Honorable Makosonke Maneli, Honorable members of the Portfolio Committee on Employment and Labor, leaders of Nedlac Social Partners, Organized Business Mr. Kes Kuvadia, Organized Labor led today by Soli Petwe, Community Constituency Mr. Tulani Chefuta, Overall Convener of Government Mr. Tembinkosi Mkalipi, former leaders of Nedlac Social Partners, Nedlac Executive Director Ms. Lisa Seftel, the United Nations Resident Coordinator in South Africa, Mr. Nelson Muff, ILO Director, Pretoria Office, Mr. Alexio Musindo, the Chair of the PCC, Mr. Vali Musa, the ED of the PCC, Crispian Olva, PCC Commissioners, President of the High Council for Social Dialogue from Senegal, Ms. Ntap Innocence, Principal Secretary of the National Advisory Committee on Labour from Lesotho, Mr. Moshe Musase, Chairperson of the Labour Advisory Board from Eswatini, Mr. Mtunzi Shabangu, the representative of the Tripartite Negotiating Forum from Zimbabwe, Mr. Clemens Vusani, leaders of the social dialogue institutions in Africa who are joining us virtually from Algeria, Botswana, Kenya, Namibia, Madagascar, Tanzania, and throughout Africa, leaders of sister organizations of Nedlac from the CCMA, UIF, Compensation Fund, Productivity South Africa, and Proudly South Africa, representatives of the Nedlac social partners, Nedlac Secretariat, members of the media, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning, and once again, thank you for joining us here today at the 29th Nedlac Annual Summit. To kick off our proceedings, I am going to give a brief overview regarding the engagements we are going to have here today and try and give a summary of the objectives of the summit. Now, over the past 30 years of democracy, Nedlac has focused Nedlac has focused on influencing policy and legislation, hosting several significant engagements and summits, and coordinating social partner responses to challenging situations. It has become, thanks Minister. It has become a proudly South African institution and has contributed to deepening democracy, strengthening policy making, and robust social dialogue. Between May and June 2024, the social partners at Nedlac reviewed the government's 30-year report and developed their reflections on achievements and lessons learned. They have also proposed their own recommendations on socio-economic priorities for the 7th administration, including the 12 strategic priorities on which Nedlac social partners want to commit to collaborate with the government. The call in the GNU Statement of Intent and of the President for a National Dialogue has also raised the profile of social dialogue, and it would be opportune for the Nedlac social partners to consider and indicate their role and that of Nedlac in the national dialogue. The annual summit will thus focus on these three areas: celebrating the 30 years of Nedlac, determining the Nedlac's future strategic priorities, and contributing to the debate on social dialogue. And with those short welcoming remarks, may I invite all of you to please rise for the singing of the national anthem. Can we all rise for the singing of the national anthem? And for the men in the room who are wearing hats or caps, can I please ask you to take those off for the singing of the national anthem?
Sapor
very much. We may be seated. She was the previous MEC for Health in the Eastern Cape Province, and before that, she served as the MEC for Development and Agrarian Reform, tongue twister. She served as the MEC for the Development and Agrarian Reform. She served in different roles in local government until she became the executive mayor of the OR Tambo District Municipality in the Eastern Cape. Ladies and gentlemen, may we please put our hands together for the opening address that is going to be given by the Honorable Minister of Employment and Labor, Minister Nomakosazana Meth. Minister. Great.
Thank you so much, Chairperson of BOSA, Ms. Mavuso. It's cold up here. I'm the most disorganized person. I wanted to disorganize this arrangement, and I wanted to come up with my deputy ministers because I didn't understand why I'm put all by myself. But my apologies, maybe because of the protocols of summits. If you are not part of the people who will speak, you don't get to be allocated here. And unfortunately, those who are supposed to speak, I received some apologies that they will be joining online, so I understand. Good morning to you once more, Program Director, Deputy President of the Republic of South Africa, His Excellency Paul Mashatile, Honorable Deputy Ministers of Labor, Honorable Sbiya and Honorable Mgcina, Honorable Deputy Minister of DTIC, Honorable Godlimpi, Honorable Chairperson of the Portfolio Committee on Employment and Labor, Honorable Maneli, Honorable members of the Portfolio Committee on Employment and Labor, former Ministers of Employment and Labor, Deputy Chairperson of the Presidential Climate Commission, Mr. Vali Musa, leaders of Nedlac constituencies, Mr. Kulekani Mate, for organized business, Mr. Soli Petswe, organized labor, Mr. Tulani Chefuta, community constituency, Mr. Tembinkosi Mkhalipi, overall convener of government. Former leaders of Nedlac Social Partners, Nedlac Executive Director, Ms. Lisa, PCC Executive Director, Dr. Crispian, the United Nations Resident Coordinator in South Africa, Mr. Nelson Maff, Dialogue Director, Pretoria Office, Mr. Alexio Musindo, leaders of the social dialogue institutions in Africa who are present here with us, both physically and online. President of High Council of Social Dialogue, Senegal, Ms. Deb Innocence, Principal Secretary of National Advisory Committee on Labor, Lesotho, Mr. Moshe Mosase, Chairperson of the Labor Advisory Board, Eswatini, Mr. Mtunzi Shabangu, Team Leader of the Tripartite Negotiating Forum, Zimbabwe, Mr. Clemens Vosani, all distinguished guests from all spheres of government and all sectors of our society, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. It is my great pleasure to welcome you to this 29th Nedlac Annual Summit. We are particularly honored that the Deputy President, Mr. Paul Mashatile, though not here in person, will be delivering his keynote address to this summit, and that affirms government's collective commitment to strengthening the partnerships that are vital to South Africa's future. This occasion is especially significant as it precedes a historic milestone that we plan to celebrate in 2025. the Nedlac 30th anniversary. The National Economic Development and Labour Council remains a pride of the country as we craft the way to the next 30 years. Coincidentally, 2024 marks 30 years since South Africa rejoined the International Labour Organization and Convention 144 on tripartite consultation influenced that establishment of this very important institution of ours in South Africa in 1995, even when C-144 was not yet ratified by our country. The world applauds Nedlac not only because of its existence and as a case study for best practice, but more because of the impact Nedlac has had in the socio-economic environment of South Africa. Since its inception, Nedlac has been the cornerstone of our country's social dialogue, bringing together government, business, labor, and community sectors to shape the policies that drive our economic and social progress. I'm encouraged by the social partnership priority areas, as these are perfectly aligned to the government's strategic priorities, which are to drive inclusive growth and job creation, to reduce poverty and tackle the high cost of living, to build a capable, ethical, and developmental state. The many pieces of legislation that define our economy and labor market today remain a thread that connects all of us. The recent completion of negotiations of the amendments to about 60 sections in our labor laws is a case in point. To improve the labor market's efficiency and promote workers' rights, particularly in the face of the changing nature of work. These amendments will continue to define our labor market beyond today, hence the dialogue between social partners remain a central convergence point in South Africa's democracy. We hold this annual summit under unique circumstances, where the 7th administration, characterized by the ANC-led Government of National Unity, the GNU, had resolved to dedicate the next 5 years to actions that will advance 3 strategic priorities: to drive inclusive growth and job creation, to reduce poverty and tackle the high cost of living, and to build a capable, ethical, and developmental state. Government is in a process of finalizing the Medium-Term Development Plan, MTDP, 2024-2029. And through this plan, clear objectives and a roadmap to achieve the priorities will be articulated. The GNU presents us with an opportunity and challenges, and using the consultative muscle of Nedlac, it is my belief that we can maximize on the opportunities presented to us much more as the country. As we reflect on the past 3 decades, we acknowledge the vital role Nedlac has played in fostering an inclusive, consultative approach to policy making that has been central to our democratic ethos. Today, as we gather to discuss the pressing challenges and opportunities that lie ahead, we are reminded of the collective strength that defines this institution. Nedlac's unique model of engagement is not just a symbol of our commitment to participatory governance, it is a testament to what we can achieve when we work together towards common goals. This year's summit comes at a pivotal moment where our country is faced with numerous challenges: unemployment, economic inequality, poverty, and the need for radical, inclusive, job-creating economic growth, all within a rapidly evolving global context. We meet at a point where the data from the Quarterly Labour Force Survey Q2 report states that approximately 3.6 million out of the 10.3 million young people aged 15 to 24 years were not in employment, education, or training. This number continues to increase, and it is a challenge we must tackle collectively as social partners. South Africa, as a global player, is not immune from the effects of the poly crisis, digitalization, climate change, and geopolitics climate that we're operating under. But also, climate change affects employment, economic stability, and social protection measures. But I'm pleased to note that significant strides against climate change are being made through Presidential Climate Commission. As we navigate these complex issues, Nedlac's role remains more crucial than ever before. We must continue to champion the values of dialogue, consensus building, and mutual respect that have underpinned our progress as a country. I like the approach of Nedlac. When I was introduced, told that there is no voting. Everything is on consensus, which is something that builds institutions and builds countries. That's why you are progressing so well as Nedlac, and we must learn something from that consensus building approach of Nedlac. This summit is thus not only an occasion to look back at 3 decades of collective achievement and reflect on the challenges encountered, but also an opportunity to reflect on our shared path going forward with renewed commitment. We have navigated the complexities of enhancing labor market policy to enable inclusive economic growth and job creation. In recent years, Nedlac has successfully coordinated social partners' responses to crises such as the energy crisis, the broader economy, and the COVID-19 pandemic. Indeed, Nedlac stands as a beacon of collaboration, embodying the spirit of social dialogue and consensus. As we journey through the 21st century, Nedlac's role becomes increasingly vital in fostering sustainable economic growth, ensuring equitable labor practices, and promoting social justice. The 30-year report, which is being publicly launched today, is testament to our successes together and a crucial tool for understanding the lessons learned and as well as the priority focus areas as we advance to the next 30 years. The report indicates that there is a strong consensus among social partners on the urgent need to address various critical areas. I will highlight just a few. On structural reforms, we welcome the commitment of social partners to continue to partner with government to implement structural reforms to enhance economic efficiency and address entrenched disparities. As government, we thank you for existing efforts, especially businesses led by BUSA, and welcome your partnerships in the areas of energy, water, freight, public transport, and digital issues. On infrastructure development, government needs all social partners to prioritize infrastructure development to support economic growth, improve service delivery, and create job opportunities. On social security, in the face of climate change and digital transitions, the need for a comprehensive social security is acknowledged. The government is committed to partnering to improve and extend the social security systems of grants, unemployment insurance, and pension. The two-pot retirement system is an important measure to assist distressed workers. Measures such as these need to be implemented to cushion workers facing just transition. State capacity. We must strengthen state capacity, especially at local government level, to ensure effective implementation of policies and delivery of services. State capacity is not only a government project. Workers in the public service can play a crucial role in ensuring a more responsive government. These key issues require an unwavering partnership and robust social dialogue by social partners to create lasting solutions that will build our economy, strengthen the labor market, create jobs, and address a number of pressing social and economic challenges facing our country, such as triple challenges of unemployment, poverty, and inequality. Madam Chair, in conclusion, I want to commit my support to your work as Nedlac and would like to encourage social partners to continue engaging as your work manifests into the global footprint in employment and labor sector. It would be careless of me not to share with you the capacity challenges we have found in compensation fund and unemployment insurance fund. And these are both in terms of skills and governance. These fault lines were highlighted sharply by Auditor General recently. And to this extent, we are prioritizing these capacity challenges through the organizational repurposing of the department to strengthen capacity and capabilities. Equally, I want to assure you as social partners that we will be acting accordingly against any official of the department that compromises governance processes. I want to thank all of you, our social partners, stakeholders, and members of the Nedlac community, regional community, and international agencies for your support, dedication, and tireless efforts. Your contributions ensure that Nedlac continues to serve as a beacon of collaborative governance. I would like to commend Nedlac and CCMA for their clean audit outcomes, and congratulations to Nedlac, as we know that it is their first clean audit outcome. And I think they deserve just a big round of applause from the House. This is particularly commendable as we want to inculcate a culture of good governance and excellence throughout the Dell family. As we look ahead to the next 30 years, let us recommit ourselves to the values that have brought us this far. Together we can build a South Africa that is more inclusive, more equitable, and more prosperous for all. I wish you a productive and inspiring summit. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister. Thank you. Thank you very much, Minister. So, ladies and gentlemen, that was the opening address from the Minister of Employment and Labor, Minister Nomakosazana Meth, and now we move on to the keynote address that was supposed to have been delivered virtually by the Deputy President, Paul Mashatile. He unfortunately, due to a change in his schedule, will no longer be able to deliver this address virtually. He has, however, pre-recorded the keynote address. Deputy President Paul Mashatile was Minister of Arts and Culture between 2010 and 2014, and before that he was the Premier of Gauteng from 2008 to 2009. He has held many MEC portfolios in the Gauteng provincial government, including housing and finance, and he was appointed Deputy President in March 2023. And now for his recorded keynote address, if we can have that played, please.
Good morning. I'm honored to be able to make this address today at this esteemed 29th Nedlac Annual Summit on the 30th anniversary of South Africa's freedom and democracy. I would have loved to have joined you physically. However, I'm in Limpopo to fulfill an important constitutional responsibility, which is to provide water to all communities. Compatriots, Nedlac continues to be the cornerstone of social dialogue and consensus building in our nation, playing a pivotal role in advancing our collective vision for a prosperous and inclusive society. As Nedlac celebrates 30 years, we must also pay tribute to the key people who have built Nedlac. These include former Minister of Labor and former convener from organized business, labor and community organizations. Through Nedlac, especially in response to COVID-19 pandemic, we convened a session to develop an economic reconstruction and recovery plan. We appreciate the collective in Nedlac that has always been critical in engaging government in response to socio-economic challenges. Hence, we are of the view that we must continue to strengthen Nedlac as a critical player in building strong social compacts. Further, our approach to dealing with COVID-19 and the energy, freight, and logistic crisis is evidence of the gains that we can and have made as a collective. We must also pay tribute to BUSA, partnership focusing on energy, freight, and logistics, and crime. The government is considering extending Operation Vulindlela's work to other critical areas of the economy. And it would appreciate the same social partnership to make these areas work. Equally, we note the efforts made through the Presidential Job Summit to retain and create jobs the setting of a national minimum wage, and ongoing labor law reforms. This also includes the two-pot retirement system, where workers can access a portion of their retirement savings when faced with high levels of indebtedness. As we celebrate this important achievement, we urge South Africans to be wise in assessing their savings. Please only take it if there is a desired need. Ladies and gentlemen, Nedlac has also assisted in framing significant legislation such as Basic Conditions of Employment Act, Labor Relations Act, and Employment Equity Act, thereby giving effect to the rights guaranteed by the Bill of Rights in our Constitution. While we have passed significant legislation to transform the labor, according to Stats SA's recent employment figures, South African employment reached its highest rate in 2 years, reaching 33.5%. In this regard, government remains committed to addressing unemployment, among others, through the Presidential Youth Employment Intervention, which has established South African Youth Mobi as a zero-rated platform for unemployed young people, with over 4.3 million engaged and 1.6 million secured opportunities. Moreover, the Government of National Unity has resolved to dedicate the next 5 years to actions that will advance 3 strategic priorities: to drive inclusive growth and job creation, to reduce poverty and tackle the high cost of living, and to build a capable, ethical, and developmental state. I want to assure you that the Government of National Unity's commitment to protecting and extending labor rights to all workers remains resolute. Our goal is to encourage fixed capital investment, industrialization, job creation, and the transformation of our people's lives. We should intentionally invest in education and skills development. We must work together to create a stable, efficient, and successful democracy that unites everyone. Later today, you will hear from the Director General of ILO, Gilbert Hingo, about social dialogue's role in promoting social justice. The ILO has pioneered the concept of social dialogue, which they have defined as negotiations, consultations, joint action, discussions, and information sharing involving employers, workers, and government. South Africa has extended its social compact to include all significant players in society, including traditional social partners like business, labor, and government. This initiative has been instrumental in shaping the country's democratic election. The Government of National Unity is leading a national dialogue process to develop a national social compact aiming to meet the aspirations of the National Development Plan. Despite the lack of agreement on a comprehensive social compact, the experience of social dialogue and compacting has proven invaluable. The principles of social dialogue guide the government as it strives towards a shared objective. The government is committed to involving public participation and social partners in addressing economics, unemployment, inclusion, service delivery, social protection, and combating corruption, sexism, racism, and homophobia. We envisage the national dialogue process as an opportunity to do two things. Firstly, to build a social contract with the people following the election campaign, which showed low trust and poor voter turnout. By engaging with citizens, the aim is to inspire trust and support for the National Development Plan and its medium-term development plan implementation. In this regard, the social partners at Nedlac, in partnership with the Department of Planning, Monitoring and Evaluation, have conducted a 30-year review of the period, focusing on achievements, lessons, plans for the future. We will use these partners' inputs to finalize the government's medium-term development for 2030. Secondly, we see the national dialogue process as an opportunity to secure commitments from stakeholders who can carry a mandate to collaborate with government to achieve common goals. Your role in this regard is imperative for securing collaboration on critical socio-economic issues. The national dialogue will address unresolved issues affecting South Africans, particularly the impoverished, by developing a solid economic transformation strategy. However, the government has yet to finalize the modalities of the national dialogue, and it is likely to be more encompassing of stakeholders and issues than what occurs at Nedlac. Still, it will surely draw on the 30 years of social dialogue and partnership experience at Nedlac. Compatriots, we welcome the areas of focus identified by the social partners, which include continuing to support and collaborate to speed up structural reforms for inclusive growth in areas of energy, water, freight, and ICT, as well as the commitment to work together to address social security, unemployment, and skills development issues in our country. We acknowledge the need to balance growing the economy with cushioning workers, businesses, and communities from the ravage of climate change and other disasters. We also need to transition our country at an appropriate pace to one that will be healthier and safer for future generations. We will continue to work with social partners to develop these priority areas. This is what social dialogue and social compacting are all about. Nedlac's strategic role in navigating the complexities of a rapidly changing world is crucial, as it must reaffirm its commitment to dialogue, collaboration, and inclusive decision-making amid emerging challenges, like technological disruptions and climate change. In closing, I would like to acknowledge your work and your continued support and partnership. Together we have made a difference, and together we will continue to build a brighter future for generations to come. We will also ensure that the work we do together on policy and legislative making processes. In the spirit of dialogue, I look forward to hearing about the deliberations of this summit and the direction that social partners and government will agree to take as we move towards 2030. I wish you well in your deliberations. Thank you.
That was the keynote address given by the Honorable Deputy President of the country, Paul Mashatile. And now we move on to yet another recorded address by the ILO Director General, Gilbert Hungbo. He'll be giving us the international address, and Gilbert Hungbo is from Togo. He is the 11th DG of the ILO and the first African to hold this position. He has held many prestigious roles in international multilateral organizations after serving as Prime Minister of Togo from 2008 to 2012. And I think it is also interesting to note that yesterday Nedlac hosted an information sharing session on social dialogue together with the ILO office in South Africa. And it is pleasing to note that Nedlac continues to be regarded as the forerunner of social dialogue. And there is always more to share and learn, especially as we look forward to the future, because Nedlac still has a huge job ahead of it to do. And now for the international address from the ILO Director General, Gilbert Hungbo.
His Excellency Paul Mashatile, Deputy President of the Republic of South Africa, Honorable Minister Nomakosasana Ahmed, Minister of Employment and Labor, Honorable Ministers, leaders of business and labor and other stakeholder organizations, Ms. Lisa Seftel, Nedlac Executive Directors, distinguished guests. Let me start by expressing my heartfelt congratulations to the government and people of South Africa for establishing such a vital institution of social dialogue. Nedlac has played a significant role not only in advancing post-apartheid South Africa's development, but also in sustainability of businesses and progress in the working conditions of the labor market. Nedlac's influence extends beyond South Africa's borders, serving as a beacon of excellence that has inspired similar institutions such as the Labour Economic and Social Council of Tanzania and the Tripartite Negotiating Forum of Zimbabwe. Nedlac's experience is also driving the reforms of dialogue institutions across the region and serves as a hub for sharing best practices in social and economic dialogue. Excellencies, social dialogue and partnership have been pivotal in uniting societies to confront complex socio-economic challenges. This was the case in Europe after the two world wars. This was also the case during the global financial and economic crisis, and recently the COVID-19 pandemic, where dialogue was crucial in crafting effective responses and recovery measures. Social dialogue has also successfully addressed specific work-related issues such as occupational safety and health and productivity improvement. On a global scale, leading trade union organizations and manufacturers have entered into global framework agreements to standardize labor conditions across value chains, preventing social dumping across many sectors, guided by social dialogue principles. The importance of social dialogue in achieving common goals is not overstated. Today, the world is facing numerous challenges, and these challenges include rising inequality within and between countries, technological advancement, threatening low-skilled workers, climate change, and its associated harsh and environmental challenges. Also, the jobless growth impacting youth. Excellencies, these current challenges may be seen as insurmountable, yet, for our sake, for the sake of our youngsters and future generations, Nedlac has to draw on its past 30 years of rich experience to do its part in assisting the government of South Africa in its quest for sustainable solutions to these challenges. Despite the undeniable success in the past 30 years, we know that poverty, and sometimes extreme poverty, inequalities, and its growing gap between the have and the have-nots, the job precarity and the job quality challenges, the opportunities and threats posed by artificial intelligence remain significant social and economic threats. Nedlac, because of its unique model and because of its rich experience, Nedlac remains, in my opinion, an essential element of the anchor for a better future for South Africa and beyond, particularly in the context of reflecting on the need to renew the social contract that binds the various components of the society in advancing the social justice for all. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for that international address. And now that we've received all the addresses, Minister, you are welcome to leave the stage. Let's give a round of applause for the Minister as she leaves the stage. Thank you so much, Minister. And now, for the second segment of our session, we are going to ask the Executive Director of Nedlac, Lisa Seftel, to please come onto the stage, joined by the representatives of the social partners, Mr. Tulane Chefuta, Mr. Soli Petwe, as well as Mr. Kes Kuvadia. Ladies and gentlemen, let's put our hands together for them. As they make their way up to the stage, I saw oh, there, okay, all right. Thank you very much, gentlemen. We are now going to be receiving the PowerPoint presentation of the performance of Nedlac for the financial year 2023 to 2024 from the Executive Director of Nedlac, Ms. Lisa Seftel. And if you are ready, Lisa, the stage is yours. Let's put our hands together, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. I think we heard a lot. There's a large group of people here, so I hope it's okay for me to say all protocol observed. So I'm going to be giving a presentation which is really going to focus on the performance of this last year, because that's what we do in our annual summit. But then I'm going to move to the current context and challenges of which you've already heard from the Deputy President, the Minister, as well as the ILO, but then say, I will also add to that the flavor of what social partners have been saying as we did our 30-year review, and then how could we be going forward. So just on Nedlac's performance, now I'm wondering, can you see this with all the people standing in the way? But I hope you can. So what characterized the last year? And I would say it was characterized by both continuity and change. What was the continuity? As Nedlac, we've become very good at doing information sharing and dialogues on key socioeconomic issues. We've continued to consider policies and bills, and we have a process whereby we engage with the government budget planning dialogue. There's also been change. We've had to prepare for the transition to the 7th administration, and we have used this time in the first half of the year to celebrate and reflect on 30 years of democracy. I also have to say that usually we spend a long time, detailed engagement on especially legislation, but because the sixth administration wanted to make quite sure that many bills were completed, I would say that we rushed it more than we would otherwise do. But I hope we still added to the quality of that legislation. We've done well. We met 92% of our targets. We do annually a stakeholder survey where 78% of our staff and 78% of our stakeholders and 84% of our staff were satisfied, which is all of you. We got a clean audit. And when we tracked, because we have a parliamentary tracker that tracks how many bills considered at Nedlac end up in Parliament, and over the 5-year period, many more bills did get to Parliament and subsequently have been passed and promulgated by the President. Then just to look at, and I'm not going to go through the details, but to remind all of you of what you contributed to and to indicate the breadth of issues that we discuss in Nedlac. And I think, as we've indicated earlier on, yesterday we had an information sharing symposium with other countries in Africa with similar institutions. And I think there was it was important dialogue about how some institutions only focus on the labour market and how others, including in French-speaking Africa, have a much broader mandate and how that enriches social dialogue. So the policies we looked at was electricity pricing, although I did hear that the new minister is indicating that it's starting again, but that's always good. Master skills plan, schools issues, and then the very important national labour migration policy, which the Department of Employment and Labour is responsible for. When it came to bills, we did a lot of work on the Mine Health and Safety Amendment Bill, although it's not, neither at that or the next one is not yet in Parliament. Victim Support Bill, National Water Resource Agency Bill, I think has been passed and signed, and the Radioactive Waste Management Bill. Then on the key dialogues, I indicated before, we did work on the government budget planning, and a lot of work in the run-up to AGOA, and also earlier this year in preparation for the WTO. We have a lot of engagement on energy, electricity, freight, and public transport. And you can see on the other side the dialogues that we had, and again, the range of issues that we have been seized with. And again here, this is in relation to labour and development. You can see the extent to which we have engaged. A big issue for Nedlac, an ongoing issue, has been, what can I say, the legacy or the backlog arising out of the work we did on COVID-19 and the need for income replacement. And we've tried to do a lot of work on the cost of living, and the Deputy President indicated that this is a focus area for this new government. It hasn't been an area of enormous success because those issues are quite complicated, but hopefully an ongoing area of concern. Our last summit last year focused on responding to crises. So we have looked also at how there can be better responses to disaster management, linked to the issue of the food prices, red tape in the distribution of food and donations, and then a number of other areas where really we share information to build understanding between the social partners. Now, as was indicated, the Presidential Climate Commission has been with us. It's a fourth program of ours as it builds its own institution since October 2022. They made a number of important recommendations on electricity planning, the review of the Just Energy Transition Investment Plan, the state of climate action. They had site visits and a lot of studies on what happened in Komati, and they made a number of recommendations, and they've also done work on South Africa's climate finance landscape, and a lot of engagements and consultations, particularly on the ground, and particularly in Mpumalanga, which is the province that is going to be the soonest and most hardest hit by some of the implications of a just transition, or hopefully will, to enable that the transition in Mpumalanga would be more just. Then, just other key areas of our work. The Minister referred to the issue of labour law reform, and all the former overall conveners there on my far left will know that this is the heart of Nedlac, being able to respond to the changes in the labour market with changes to legislation. And it is always an enormous source of debate about how flexible or how regulated we want the labour market to be. Over the period, there was a lot of discussion about negotiations, amendments, and we built an infrastructure around that with a facilitator, legal drafters, and technical support. The result of that are over 60 amendments to our labour laws, which hopefully will go to Parliament in the next forthcoming period. So, honourable members of Parliament, there's a lot of work coming your way. The other thing that we've done this year is that we have revised our constitution to improve the functioning of Nedlac. In fact, one of the things that we revised, Bacon Charlie from Organised Labour, the former convener, is that in our constitution, I think it was the deputy president, or I'm not sure who, that would chair these summits. But now we said, no. Anybody can chair from any constituency. So that's why we now have organised business chairing today. So we've modernized our constitution. And we have a new Nedlac bill, which I think is already on its way to Cabinet, and then it will go to Parliament, we hope, which really will also assist to improve political accountability and representativity. There have been a number of calls that as our society becomes diverse, in all constituencies, business, labour, and community or civil society, we need to create space for that diversity in the Nedlac legislation. And then this year, there was still, COVID is an ongoing legacy for us. In fact, I'm not seeing anybody here wearing a mask, but it's part of the COVID legacy. But we also ran a very successful program aimed at occupational health and safety practitioners and staff stewards on how to ongoingly respond to COVID-related issues. And in fact, recently, we've also been looking at the issue of heat stress, which is a climate change impact, and whether the Department of Employment and Labour does have regulation on this, but it's unknown. It's not well known. It's not well understood by practitioners. And this might be something that we would also want to do going forward. Now, I'm going to move off our performance, and I'm going to go to the current context. So, I think we can say that we're meeting at a time when there are challenges and opportunities. And this is what I'll be looking at in the next slides. But these little circles, some of which you can't see properly. But I took these wordings from what the overall convener said in our annual report, or what our social partners have said about the GNU. For Labour, they've said it's uncharted waters. So behind that bullet is actually a picture of former President Trump, but I think it can apply even to our situation. That's how some people see the GNU. Right down there, it says bad political choice. I won't say who said that. Organised business and others have said new energy, I think in government. Others have said cautious optimism and renewed business confidence. So amongst our social partners and in society, the verdict of the GNU is still out. And that's an opportunity, as the Deputy President was saying, about how can social partners confirm a positive verdict. Because we are faced with systemic and structural unemployment and domestic and global shocks. These two slides come from the 30-year review and the work that government has been doing in preparation for the 7th administration. And you can see the challenges. The other thing that I think social partners reflected when we did the 30-year process is the ongoing significant threat of climate change. It's not something theoretical. This is eteguini. And increasingly, there are threats that we're all having to face around increases in temperature. The other issue which the PCC has been highlighting most recently is the fact that our carbon-intensive economy, and you can see we are right up there, exposes us to adverse economic shocks because there is an initiative, particularly from Europe but also from America, to introduce carbon border adjustment mechanisms. So if we want to export a car that is made in some of our factories using coal-based energy, they don't want it. They will no longer trade with us, as well as changing consumer sentiments. These are big emerging issues for us. We also live in an uncertain world. The geopolitical situation in the Middle East and Europe has led to political tensions, economic strains, global supply chain disruptions. I remember when there was the AGOA summit. It was an ambiguous issue, particularly for organized labor and community, about whether they should be going to the AGOA summit at the same time when America was supporting some of the military activities in Ukraine and Israel. Then there is also, and I think the ILO DG mentioned it, digitalization and AI bring additional risks, job displacement, fake news, and so on. Now, this is a slide that I found, I think, from the HSRC, because often we always see the same slides, so same pictures. This is telling us that the government and the economy, that people perceive that the government and the economy are not doing well. 51% of South Africans are not proud of the way democracy works, and 57% are not proud of the nation's economic achievements. And then also from the HSRC, public trust in political institutions is low. Just about 2 out of 3 South Africans do not trust our political institutions. And that's why those of us here that are attempting to build trust have an important leadership role to play. So what is our challenge? At the heart of rebuilding public trust in government and social stability is the imperative to deliver services to enable a growing economy that will create employment opportunities, reduce inequality and poverty, and cushion those who are vulnerable due to our past legacy and future threats. And this was a big theme from our deliberations in the working sessions on the 30-year review of social partners. We have to balance initiatives for inclusive growth with ways to cushion those that are vulnerable in the context of to achieve social stability, and we have to do so with, as the Minister of Finance tells us, reduced fiscal resources. And that's what that slide on the right shows us. There is, this is what our 30-year report says, a narrow window of opportunity involving difficult decisions about revenue sources, spending, and partnerships. What is the window? That the GNU has provided, political and business confidence has been strengthened on the hope of the success of the GNU. Momentum, and I think we read about it often and we hear about it from our social partners, that there is increased momentum to end energy, freight, and other related crises has increased. There are stronger institutions, and there is greater support for institutional reform. And we would say that the turning points have been reached in key SOEs. So the opportunity is to nurture the GNU in a fragile environment. It is our best and only option. But also to be one step ahead, and I'll come back to that on my next slide. Then to plan increasingly for future risks before they eventualize in the current. I'm struck often that we talk a lot about we have to redress the legacy of apartheid, and we do. Our challenge now is that there's going to be a future legacy that around climate change that we have to address proactively. So we have to be able to redress the past and plan to do more redress for what we did in the past, which is impacting on the future. And this is where we come in, to consolidate social partnerships, to grow the trust, the legitimacy, and to ensure speedier delivery. I thought here, and I just use the example of the energy space, because as Nedlac social partners, we've been very involved in this. And we've made significant efforts to end load shedding. And it's a big breath of fresh air. But we still face issues: affordability, distribution, transmission, emissions, and transitions. And to be able to achieve this step ahead, it requires a significant amount of consensus to holistic and sustainable solutions. And the graph here just shows how much electricity prices are increasing. This is putting it in a more straightforward way. So what is the opportunity for social partnership? Yes, there are differences between social partners, but there's significant consensus on key issues impeding South Africa: structural reforms, infrastructure development, social wage and social security, skills, and the need to improve state capacity to local government. There are differences. Whenever we have our government budget dialogue, there are big differences about what should happen around the government debt. Recently, there has been a public engagement about the differences around national health insurance and the National Social Compact. There is an opportunity that it can still come back into Nedlac. Again this week, there's a difference around the Tobacco and Electronic Products Bill. And Nedlac and the social partners are keen, want to appeal to the Department of Health. Let's bring it back. We have the mechanisms in Nedlac to achieve a more workable consensus rather than a litigious route. There is that rich history of social partnership. Nedlac has stayed the course for 30 years, as well as birthing many other social partner initiatives and institutions. So lastly, I'm going to talk about the future of social partnership and dialogue. And again, I've quoted from our annual report, the Minister: Nedlac's role becomes increasingly vital in fostering sustainable economic growth. Kaiser Moyali from Organised Business: Nedlac should continue to play a pivotal role in nation building. Tulani, you'll hear from him soon. Nedlac must take an interest in entrenching democracy. Timinkosi Mkalipi from government: we must double our resolve to address stubborn challenges. And Gerald Twala from Organised Labour, warning us about the uncharted waters. So what then is the future? As has been indicated already, we embarked on this process, and we are revealing today our 30-year report. And it's a short document. It's readable, we hope. Mr. Mashaba, unlike the 30-year document, which is a long one, the government's one is long. So we hope that you'll read it. And we're handing over the report to the 7th administration. But the process allowed us to reflect on our achievements in social partnership. And one of the things we learned, I think the Deputy President, he talked about the work we did in the Economic Recovery and Reconstruction Plan. And what we kept on saying then is, we've got to do a few things well if we want to turn the country around. Well, we've now got 12 areas, but it's still focused areas. And we believe that social partners in Nedlac can move to a new level of partnership, becoming proactive rather than reactive. We're very good. In fact, we're often better at responding to crises than other things. But let us now become proactive, because we must plan and prepare for the crises that we know may come. And I also, so we can build on the responses of the last 5 years. and I also quoted here our chairperson today, that we do achieve much when the government and private sector work together in a productive way that draws on the strengths of our parties. And that's another advantage of Nedlac, is that we can draw on the strengths of all of you from your various constituencies. So the areas of social partnership priority areas, I won't go through them in a lot of detail. Some of them are existing areas of partnership. Organised business and Business for South Africa have pioneered these partnerships for inclusive growth, and there is an intention, I think it was already in the President's State of the Opening of Parliament Address, OPA, that it needs to shift to areas of water, local government, and we also suggested ICT. And then social partners, not necessarily in Nedlac, have pioneered these master plans led by former Minister Patel around sector master plans, but it's the same principles of social dialogue. The view when we were meeting was we need to prioritize certain ones that are key levers to manage a transition to more inclusive growth, those being renewable energy, auto, iron, and steel sectors. Then, ongoingly, the importance about cushioning unemployment, employment creation and public employment schemes. And when we were, again, in the 30-year review, there was a big call for greater agglomeration and acceleration. And also from Nedlac many years ago, or not so many years ago, I'm not sure, National Treasury, there was the introduction of employment tax incentive, which is a tax incentive to employ young people. It can do more. And it's the way in which business can contribute to employment creation. On addressing hunger and poverty, in Nedlac for a long time, we had a comprehensive social security strategy, and there's a call particularly from the community constituency that we need to revive that. And particularly we have to revive it in the context of climate change. And it's not only about looking at public grants, it's also about how do pension schemes change in the context of early retirement when coal mines, for example, may have to retire. We need to sharpen existing delivery mechanisms. For example, one of the things when you're looking at the high cost of living is, would it be better if a pregnant mother would get a social grant? And there's a lot of debate about that. But if every mother got a child grant the moment the child was born, it would be better than because our service mechanisms are ineffective and they only get the grant a year later. Which links us to the need for targeted interventions to improve food security amongst children. In respect to the labour market, there are two key areas that came up. The issue of a reformed and modernised UIF system. And it has to be, the UIF was built, Minister, for temporary, on the assumption that it was for temporary unemployment between jobs. That's not what we're facing now. We're facing a situation where, yes, there are situations of temporary unemployment when your factory is flooded, like what happened with Toyota in 2021, I think, as well as permanent unemployment because of some of the terrible, of what might happen with some just transitions in digitalization as a result of climate change. A reformed workplace skills system, I think there's a big acknowledgement by see, I'm looking in this direction and business is right on the side, around we need to do more. It's linked to employment around skills. And then lastly, about a responsive and capacitated government, particularly on local government, and then the need to build an active and productive partnership between public sector leaders, management and workers. And lastly, again, because we're having more frequent floods, only a couple of months ago, there were terrible floods in part of the Western Cape. And it emerged that the dams that were flooding were not dams owned by the state. They were dams owned, I'm not sure who, but some private landowners. We have to have a multi-stakeholder response to issues like disasters. So then, just to indicate, and I think both the Minister and the Deputy President indicated, the priority areas of government, which are about on the left-hand side, and you can see that there is strong alignment between government's priorities and the areas that social partners would want to work with government on. So then, what does this mean for Nedlac? As I indicated, this year was one of continuity and change, and going forward, we think there needs to be further continuity and change. Our ongoing dialogues is an area of continuity. To facilitate and complement bilateral and sectoral social dialogue initiatives and collaborations. The labour law reform, we'll never finish Johnny Goldberg labour law reform because the labour market is always changing. So it is better that we amend some laws where we reach consensus and we go to Parliament. And then the next year, we review the labour market again. And I think the Commission, when we discussed this, was saying, let Nedlac even set up a capacity to be able to monitor the changes in the labour market so that we can be responsive to these changes. So it should be seen as an ongoing process. And then the ongoing engagement on socioeconomic policies and bills. What can be the change? Firstly, to collaborate proactively, like a little bit we did with COVID, with public milestones. And I think it also came up in the 30-year process, that we need to set milestones that the public knows about on identified priority areas. There clearly is an increasing need for synergy between the Presidential Climate Commission, which is providing advice and research, and what we need to do in Nedlac. Because the PCC can make a recommendation on, or can give us a report on the problems of heat stress in the workplace. But it is only the social partners that can negotiate and agree on a regulation or a code of good practice on heat stress in the workplace. And then the issue about stronger mechanisms to monitor and evaluate the implementation of laws and policies. And honourable members from Parliament, it's to complement the work that you do, because ultimately government departments need to report to Parliament. But there is value when social partners have spent a lot of time understanding an issue, like I always use the issue of the border management policy, to then be able to hear from the Department of Home Affairs or that institution that's been set up about how they're doing, and to continue to give feedback. And then lastly, to consider developing, codifying and extending partnerships with the Department of Planning, Monitoring and Evaluation, also because of the monitoring and the policy role, as well as potentially, it was raised, provincial and at sector levels, like with the master plans. So then in conclusion, colleagues, just to, I think in summary, last year we said we face a polycrisis. Let's not run away from it. We still face a polycrisis with fiscal constraints and the impact of climate change, both physically and economically, being the most prominent. But there is optimism. There is an opportunity. There's that narrow path of change to balance reform for inclusive growth with cushioning of business, workers and communities. And the lessons from the 30 years of democracy show us that where social partners share similar concerns in critical areas, there's a solid basis for partnerships. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much to the Executive Director of Nedlac, Lisa Saftel. Now, if I can please just invite the representatives of social partners to please come back on stage. I don't think there's going to be any more PowerPoint presentations, so you can make your way back onto the stage. Mr. Tulani Chefuta, Kes Kuvadia, and Soli Petwe. Kes, we are going to be receiving your address first. So maybe you might just want to take the floor as your colleagues make their way onto the stage. Kes Kuvadia, ladies and gentlemen, the representatives of business. If you can please give him a round of applause.
Thanks, Busi, and Minister, Deputy Ministers, leaders of business, labor, community and government, all other protocol observed, and let me recognize the ED of Nedlac. We've seen the ED's presentation, and by and large, business would be on the same page. We are celebrating today 30 years of Nedlac, and we're also celebrating 30 years of democracy. And a celebration of Nedlac promoting social dialogue and its critical role in promoting our democracy while recognizing the challenges that lie ahead. And the ED talked about some of those challenges. We must congratulate the Executive Director and her team for a good year, with achievements that we recognize and we commend. These include a clean audit, all but one KPI is being achieved, high levels of staff and stakeholder satisfaction with Nedlac, and we recognize that, and an increase in the number of bills passed in Parliament after consideration at Nedlac, and that is particularly important in our view, because it shows that some of the discussions that we have at Nedlac are bearing fruit. We also recognize the considerable progress made through the governance task team at Nedlac on deliberations on Nedlac's role, positioning, mandate, and impact, given that we are celebrating its 30th year. We believe that this should have been done earlier, but after 30 years, to look at Nedlac's role and to look at its relevance, to look at its positioning, we believe is critical. We believe more work needs to be done to consider whether Nedlac is fit for purpose in the current environment and the challenges that lie ahead. The world of work has changed significantly in the last 30 years, but particularly in the last decade or so. The current economic trajectory, which will gain momentum every year, is that of an economy that is characterized by artificial intelligence, digitalization, hybrid ways of working, and diverse ways of work. These are significant changes, and Nedlac needs to seriously discuss how it remains relevant in that environment and what it needs to discuss and what it needs to do. Some of the critical elements of this evolving economic environment are investment in infrastructure still remains important, because infrastructure is important not just to economic growth, but to social development as well. Developing and maintaining a robust infrastructure is therefore critical. Second element, demand-led human capital development, including how we educate children at schools, including healthcare and public health initiatives, including job training and vocational programs, entrepreneurship support, and adult education and lifelong learning. Another element, technological progress and innovation, which is growing at a phenomenal pace. And that's a train that's left the station, and we need to see how we respond to that, but also how we are more proactive in developing approaches to that. Access to financial resources are still important for a whole range of issues we need to do. Sound governance and institutions are critical for an economy and for a social economy. And given the history, the recent history in our country, that is particularly important for us. We need to recognize that economies grow in and develop in an international trade and globalization environment. We often think that we have the ability to significantly change that, but we don't. And so Nedlac should be talking about how we manage our socio-economy in that. Access to markets and entrepreneurship is a critical element of the growing, evolving economy, And then the ED touched on this natural resources and sustainable development and climate change and all of those. It is imperative that Nedlac leads dialogue on these. Otherwise, we become irrelevant, and other matters critical to economic growth and job creation, if it is to remain relevant. We need to ensure that this social dialogue platform, which Nedlac is, keeps remaining relevant and respected. Nedlac is respected in many countries as a successful platform for social dialogue, but we must dialogue on relevant issues that are germane to the current and evolving economic and social challenges, while being informed by our 30-year history. We cannot continue to dialogue on what we've dialogued 30 years ago, or we've dialogued even 10 years ago. The dialogue needs to concentrate on the current socio-economic realities and the evolving social-economic realities. Nedlac was established as a critical platform on which social partners enter dialogue to find each other on important matters related to the socio-economy. We can, 30 years on, reflect on milestones that this democracy has produced. We can safely say that the Department of Employment and Labor and its intercoordinating departments have fostered change with groundbreaking reforms negotiated at Nedlac. These include negotiations on the national minimum wage, which changed the landscape of labor relations in this country and demonstrated the collective effort of the social partners. Nedlac has shifted the dial and created a participatory paradigm and a revolutionary act empowering it in this particular instance. In giving effect to the Nedlac Act, by ensuring effective public participation in the labor market and socio-economic policy and legislation, we need to constantly strive to ensure that Nedlac is dynamic, relevant, and effective. While we have seen improvement, that this is an ideal that social partners, as part of the Nedlac leadership, must hold on to. We must assume the mantle and keep ourselves accountable and honest in the pursuit of social justice and economic growth in an inclusive and transformative economy. We would all agree that the economy we need to grow and we need to develop on the back of increasing and sustained investments is one in which we will deliberately make interventions to ensure that economic growth is to the benefit of all of our people and that the majority of our people have a stake in such an economy. Otherwise, let alone growing an economy, we certainly can't sustain it. There is much work to be done in this area. We must, as the business constituency, record the critical matters that need to be addressed at Nedlac in the coming period. One, acknowledge crises and act immediately on those crises. We can't continue to spin wheels. We don't have time to spin wheels. We, with social partners, have consistently raised concerns about the chaotic situation with the Unemployment Insurance Fund. The Minister referred to that as well, including poor administration, weak governance, and corruption. And this is with money and funds that should be going to unemployed workers. This falls squarely with the Department of Employment and Labor, and we expect substantive progress towards resolving this. We include other funds like the compensation fund in this. Two, the 15 years of engagement between social partners on the wider social protection reforms within the comprehensive social security team must now bear fruit, and we need to accelerate resolution in this area. The work done in the labor law reform team must also begin to bear fruit. We look forward to government ensuring effective implementation and oversight, as with many other reforms that Nedlac has discussed. Improved labor inspection and co-regulation, self-regulatory models are paramount to the effective functioning of businesses. We need to create enabling conditions for businesses to grow and do away with onerous red tape and over-bureaucratic processes with restrictive conditions which deter hiring and ease of doing business. Discussions on this have been held at Nedlac for years. We now look forward to government implementing the outcomes of those discussions. The world of work, as we say earlier in this speech, has changed and continues to change. So the global conversation, and it's the global conversation that dictates that we recognize diverse forms of employment or provision of work and consider flexibility in social protection models. An essential element of this is to ensure the skills architecture is interrogated to ensure that it is responsive to current labor market needs. The sixth point that we would like Nedlac to look at in the coming period, we need to grow the economy and rethink the economic growth strategy. South Africa must aspire to become a high-income economy. Achieving this necessitates a rethink of the macroeconomic growth policy and strategy, along with a more concerted focus on strengthening the capacity of the state to implement economic growth policies. We must continue with a focus on economic recovery and structural reforms to unlock potential growth and the opportunities that this country presents. We need to resolve immediate constraints to growth and review institutional mandates that hamper growth and employment. Nedlac is integral to this, and while we are convened to speak on these matters, we must commit to address these issues in a systematic, inclusive manner. 7, we need to reconfigure government to enhance delivery and accelerate implementation of the single public service policy and integrated delivery across government. As we have reiterated in bilateral meetings with the ministers of the new administration, business requires harmonization within departments, both within and outside of the Nedlac social dialogue space. For business to operate optimally, the environment must be sustainable, and important stakeholders must commit to move in tandem with urgency in areas we agree and manage differences in a constructive way. The last issue that we would want to raise that Nedlac needs to deal with in the coming period. As we accelerate infrastructure development, we need to implement the NIP 2050 commitments to strengthening leadership, accountability, technical capability, and relevant institutional and market reforms. As we attempt to enhance social collaboration, we need inclusive planning and implementation, engaging a wide range of stakeholders to ensure inclusive and equitable development, and foster regular dialogue and feedback mechanisms to adopt strategies based on stakeholder input. So those are the issues that we think are pertinent in the coming period. We must, as we hand over the Nedlac 30-year report, continue to ask, in our view, some critical questions that we need to look at in the future. First, how do we crystallize Nedlac's fit-for-purpose role in the evolving socio-economic environment? And I think that's a discussion, a serious discussion we need to have, and satisfy ourselves that Nedlac is fit for purpose. It's not just a question of changing the Constitution or changing the Act. It's talking about the issues we need to address. Is Nedlac most effective in enabling social dialogue to try and bring social partners closer together on broad strategy and direction, or should it try to reach consensus on the detail? And I think that's another question that we would certainly want to put on the table. What is the critical role of Nedlac? Is it to reach consensus on the detail, or to try and get social partners together on the broad strategic direction, and then as we implement that, to try and reach consensus on the detail, or try and get together on the detail? should Nedlac look at different options for social compacts? These could include bilateral and multilateral compacts, local issues-based compacts, and others. An example of this is a partnership between government and BUSA on energy, logistics, and crime and corruption. There is no doubt that we've made progress, and we've seen the benefits of that progress as a country. Instead of continuously trying to reach broad national social compacts, we tried in 2022 and didn't work. I remember that November 2022, I think we were on version 11 of a document to understand what social compacting is. And quite honestly, in our view, we spent a year doing that when we should have spent that year starting the government-business partnership. So I think these are critical questions that we need to ask. And finally, we need to ask whether Nedlac is representative enough and represents the critical stakeholders in this country. So we put those questions on the table because we remain committed to Nedlac. But we want to be committed to a Nedlac that's relevant, that's credible, and that actually plays the critical role it should play in this country. We are convinced that social partners in Nedlac must engage on the critical questions we raise above. We believe these are critical for Nedlac's ongoing relevance and effectiveness. Most importantly, if we all agree on Nedlac's critical role in the socio-economic space, especially the requirement to table in Nedlac for engagement all draft legislation with socio-economic, in the socio-economic, it is equally, most importantly, if we all agree on Nedlac's critical role in the socio-economic space, it is equally important that government and social partners equally respect their commitments, especially the requirements to table in Nedlac for engagement all draft legislation with socio-economic implications. If we do all these things, Nedlac will continue to be a shining example of effective social dialogue in the next 30 years. In conclusion, Chair, we endorse the view expressed in the ED's presentation that we need to work together as a country to promote the government of national unity and consolidate it. This is our window of opportunity. We may have all sorts of ideological issues and debates around it, but the real window of opportunity is whether through the GNU we can bring this country together and make progress. And BUSA is committed to this, and we have publicly expressed that. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Kes. That was the representative of business, and now to receive the reflections from the community social partner given by Mr. Thulani Chefuta. Thulani, if you can please make your way to the podium. Let's put our hands together for Thulani, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you.
Program Director, good morning, and please allow us to rise and stand on the already established protocols which you acknowledged so eloquently. And in that, I just can't hide from marveling on acknowledging the fact that community constituency has once again delivered a full house of delegates that were expected from it as a sign of taking this annual summit very seriously. Colleagues, in 2023, Statistics South Africa released the 2022 census report. The majority of the socio-economic indicators of the census report confirm that South Africa is in a better and improved position than it was in 1993, 1994. And we say this acknowledging challenges notwithstanding. We're starting with this reflection because we believe it is the best starting point, which just few months ago would not have been tenable. We're highlighting this because leading to May 29, similar things were raised. But those of us who wanted to make a point that so much progress has been registered may have done so to the complete ignorance of the challenges of the day. Equally and contrary, others were driving a narrative that nothing has been done in 30 years. And when they were doing that, they were also doing that to the complete ignorance of the gains that have been made. And so I think that when we have the discussions today, we can give a true reflection of the 30 years of democracy that we have witnessed. And as an aspiring social scientist, such reflections are never about yourself as an individual, but they also include the community you come from. Well, I come from a small town of Craddock in the Eastern Cape. Many would know something about what was called Craddock 4. The first president of COSATU, Elijah Baha'i, was from Craddock. One of the longest serving Secretaries General of the ANC, Canon J.A. Kalata, was from Craddock. Moses Kotane, the General Secretary of the Communist Party, who was from Northwest, had to go to Craddock for intellectual stimulation to write what was called the Craddock Letter, which was about the Africanization of the South African Communist Party. Well, Thulani Chefut is from Craddock. But the point we want to make is that that is an illustrious history that we can recite. And when we do that, we must compare and contrast with the progress that has been made in 30 years. And proudly in that community, we can mention that there is not a single shack. And it's not by fluke. It's a function of the democratic government. Not a bucket system, which was there. All houses flashing, every house having a tap and all of that. The farms where many political activists used to be killed have been given to young people through cooperatives to do farming. And that does not mean there are no challenges of the day. And so, when we reflect on the 30 years, the approach that was taken by Nedlac was correct in suggesting what are the gains that have been made. And looking forward, what can be done differently and better. And those discussions at Nedlac then ushered us into a serious consideration, not only of what has been done in 30 years, but what could be done also into the future. It is critical to acknowledge that the governance task team of Nedlac concluded its long overdue work, as indicated by the Executive Director, that leading to the adoption of the revised Constitution and the Nedlac Amendment Bill. This has enabled streamlining and better functioning of Nedlac governance structures. And this is a step in the right direction towards building a structure of Nedlac that is fit for purpose, we want to argue. Otherwise, without this piece of work, the governance instruments of Nedlac were hopelessly, you will conclude, outdated. It is commendable that Nedlac has achieved 15 of the 16 set targets for the annual performance plan of the year that we are reviewing today. That translating into 93% annual performance, which is a 14% positive improvement, ED, from the 79% performance of the previous year. And this has been accompanied by the achievement of a clean audit. We're highlighting this to commend the efforts of all social partners and the executive and the staff of Nedlac. Primarily because it is easy for others to achieve clean audits by saying, let's do as less as possible so that we don't commit mistakes. But in the case of Nedlac, it is not a hollow clean audit. It is a clean audit that is buttressed by ever-increased performance in the core business of Nedlac. And so we truly, truly commend that. When you are used into achieving such clean audits, you may be complacent along the way, but we must call them for what they are. They argue a strong case of good governance, high levels of accountability, high performance, and even prudence in the management of the resources of the institution. And so, when all other considerations that business was challenging us to have about building Nedlac as fit for purpose, that should be the building base that we must acknowledge moving forward. In the same period, the community constituency has been continuing with its endeavors of capacity building and repositioning its base as the broad representative voice of civil society in all our national platforms of social dialogue. The community constituency has been consistent in convening its annual policy school, which is a platform that combines all national organizations, a platform where we account about the work we do at Nedlac as the leadership, a platform we use to solicit mandate, a platform we use to set the agenda of the issues we're going to advocate for in the platforms of Nedlac. And that is something we do even reaching into provinces. In the course of the year, the community constituency meaningfully participated in various high-level engagements, including the support we received from the ILO to host our own capacity building workshop on just energy transition. Participated in the second Presidential Health Compact Summit, in the International Research Conference on Skills for Just Transition, Hemp and Cannabis Pakisa Action Lab, and we also hosted the AGOA Civil Society Forum and participated in the main AGOA Summit that was hosted by TTIC and the Government of the Republic of South Africa end of last year. We do want to highlight as well that amongst those we count a highly engaging bilateral meeting we had with the Director General of the ILO, who just addressed us. And we use that to share notes on the work of civil society at Nedlac and in the country as a whole, the previous and future areas of collaboration possibly with the ILO. And from his side, the DG of the ILO was specifically interested in exploring the role that can be played by civil society towards the call he has been making for building a global coalition for social justice. As broadly mandated by structures of civil society, the community constituency remains committed to champion its advocacy of critical socio-economic and long-standing campaigns around education, skills development, economic growth and inclusion, job creation, increased support for cooperatives and the informal sector, anti-poverty campaigns, the implementation of the National Health Insurance, and graduating the Social Relief of Distress Grant into full-blown basic income grant, improving the delivery of basic services at a local government level, and the disciplined implementation of the Presidential Compact on social sector and the Health Compact. In light of the electoral outcomes of our 2024 national and provincial elections, South Africa has now emerged with a government of national unity. And we believe that the deliberations of the 2023 National Dialogue on Coalition Governments that was led by Deputy President Paul Mashatile must give us lessons on how we can build on those experiences in positioning the government of national unity to serve our people. And in that, we want to challenge Nedlac and all its social partners that we must take interest in entrenching democracy through social dialogue and civic education. We also welcome the strategic issues that have been positioned as the priority program of the Government of National Unity through what is now called the Medium-Term Development Plan, focusing on driving inclusive growth, inclusive economic growth and job creation, reducing poverty and tackling high cost of living, and building a capable, ethical and developmental state. We believe that all endeavors towards driving an inclusive economic growth must place people at the center of that growth. Any growth endeavors that do not place people as active participants and beneficiaries, people will not identify with. The very same growth will be viewed as an insult to the people because it means nothing to them. And the placing of the people at the center of that inclusive economic growth must be inspired by the injunctions of the Freedom Charter that calls on people to share on the wealth of the country. When we do that, we must be mindful of the existing constraints that bind our economy. If addressed, can be immediately positioned as enablers and catalysts of attracting investments, promoting growth, and thereby leading to job creation. And we appreciate the fact that job creation is not only viewed as a subset of economic growth in this context, because we know we have experiences of growth that has not led to job creation. So the focus and priority on job creation must have a life of its own. And that focus on job creation must be led, by example, by public employment programs. And in other platforms where I read, I know that the Minister of Employment and Labor and the DMs and the team have already made a commitment of an investment into sustaining the implementation of labor activation program, including the Presidential Youth Employment Initiative. That just on its own has what we call visible impact. You may not know the name of the Presidential Youth Employment Initiative if you ask a person. But if you ask the question differently, have you ever seen these young people who work as teacher assistants in the school? There is no community that does not have experience of those. So that is the impact that you don't need. Thank you very much. That is not the impact that you don't need to research to see its presence. You can see it every day you wake up in your community. And we believe that those inclusive economic growth endeavors must equally promote support for SMMEs, cooperatives, and the informal sector. We must never, Deputy Minister Kwadlimpi, go back on the commitments we have made on localization and buying local. That on its own provides a platform for our people to identify with our economy as active participants and the products that will be in that economy. Efforts towards reducing poverty and tackling high cost of living is a very welcome priority for us, because our experience is that every time we have made calls for increased social protection for the poorest of the poor, other social partners are the first ones to say, we cannot afford this, we cannot afford that. So all it means is that we cannot afford the people of South Africa. And unfortunately, we can't wish them away. We can't bury them alive. That is why this is of special importance to us, that we must appreciate that when all else is said and done, there are people who live in levels of poverty that you don't even need to read on papers, but you can see when you visit certain communities. And so support for food security must be one of our priorities in that regard. We must begin to change gear from food parcels into productive subsistence, small-scale production that will be sustainable for communities. We must, as we indicated, cushion the poor through comprehensive social security measures. And the priority on building a capable, ethical, and developmental state must be understood in its full context. That priority, if we read enough, Joseph, is not about the capacity of the bureaucracy. One of the embedded elements in that, Comrade Barnes, is about active citizenry, which active citizenry in our context is led by community constituents. It is active citizenry that does not come into the party to make demands, but to raise its hand to be counted as part of the solution in addressing the very same challenges that the communities are confronted with. The idea of a developmental state must inspire us to acknowledge the fact that some of the very same socio-economic challenges that we want to address today are as a result of the state. There is no one who woke up and decided, I want to go and stay at Kwasisilane ezilalini zasemampondweni. They were forced out. That was the function of the state. There is no one who ever decided that we want to go and stay in far-flung areas, very far from the centers of economic activity, such that we spend all our money on transport. That was the function of the state. And therefore, the state must have an active role in undoing that which it has done. And note me, politically, I'm not saying government, I'm saying the state. And so, conceptually then, the developmental state has to do things that under normal circumstances a state would not do. We raise all of these mindful of the fact that there are both ideological and epistemic differences and contestations about the concept of a developmental state. And as part of the core mandate of Nedlac, we want to challenge us that we must rise to the occasion and lead the processes of the much needed national dialogue that is much talked about in our national discourse. These processes of engagement and social dialogue must go beyond the confines of what we know as Nedlac currently, to include everyone and anyone, in order to come up with a meaningful social compact. And we believe that the work that we've already started doing will add value in what becomes of the work of the Government of National Unity. And we're going to play our role in that by mobilizing communities to actively participate. We wish to take this opportunity and thank the entire Secretariat of Nedlac, and of course, especially our constituency coordinator, Ms. Rejoice Mutsanani, for the continued support in this period. And we further wish to acknowledge the leadership of civil society for the sense of agency they bring into our national discourse. Siyabonga.
Thank you very much for that address, Mr. Chulani Chefuta. Can I please now invite to the podium Mr. Soli Petwe to give the Labour's reflections of Nedlac. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Program Director. I'm the acting organized labor convener, acting. Thank you very much, Program Director, Deputy President in his absence here, the Minister of DLE with Deputy Ministers, Portfolio Committee members who are here, and other ministers from other departments. I saw the Deputy Minister from IDT, the Executive Director of Nedlac, Comrade Lisa, the International Labour Director, our former Nedlac social partners. I've seen a number of them, including those who joined government from Labour, leadership of government, business, Labour, community, and our officials of government and the staff of Nedlac. The 2024 marks the 30th anniversary of our young democracy. It is appropriate as we gather here today that we have concluded as a social partners and government at Nedlac a 30-year review of our achievement and challenges, and more importantly, our recommendation to the new 7th administration, which is governed under the Government of National Unity. As we gather today, it is important to remember our fundamental challenges as a nation. And in this case, as Labour, we're citing one of the critical challenges that is facing our nation is the unemployment rate, with 60% of youth unemployment rate, the resulting of levels of poverty and inequalities, the high cost of living, crime and corruption, struggle in the public and municipal service, and the fragile economic growth. We also want to take this opportunity to welcome you, Minister of DLE, with your new ministers, with your staff, Comrade Meth, and we are confirming that you have our support as organized Labour in making sure that we change the attitude of certain employers and legislation that is against workers. We look forward to working with you and the department to ensure that we conclude the 7th administration with more than fit for purpose, in particular the unemployment insurance, the compensation of occupational injuries and disease fund, where workers will not struggle to receive their monies. I think business has spoken in relation to the challenges that we're facing in UIF. And Minister, we are really asking you, working at the level of Nedlac, to address the challenges that the UIF section is facing. Similarly, we must prioritize giving the CCMA the resources it needs to fulfill its mandate to help to resolve the workplace grievances and boost the labour market stability. Nedlac is a South African legislated social dialogue where government and social partners seek to find consensus. It is in this spirit that we must ensure our proposed amendment to the labour laws strengthened, not to weaken the hard-won rights of workers. We have said already under the statement of intent of the GNU that as workers or as organized labour would want to see government of the national unity protecting the rights of workers, and we are unapologetic on that. A discussion is long overdue on the role of the employment mandate of the department and how we can ensure government employment programs provide a pathway to finding a decent permanent jobs for each participant. This includes the rising or increasing the wages of the extended public work programs, the CWP, to the national minimum wage level. This is our call, which we are calling together jointly with the communities at the level of the National Minimum Wage Commission. Many critics have questioned the relevance of Nedlac, yet it is here where the ESCOM social compact was finalized, giving the momentum for the debt relief package that today is helping ESCOM to shift its focus to maintenance and ending a load shedding. The new Minister of Transport has brought a renewed focus to rebuild Transnet and Metro Rail. We must reflect on how we can do more to support this process, as without an efficient rail network and ports, our economy will not take off. A close involvement is needed to ensure the new mining rights application system is fast-tracked to turn this critical industry around and stem the flood of the retrenchment. We have spoken, Minister, in our last engagement at Nedlac about the challenges as organized labor that we're facing. As we talk about the issue of the economic crisis, but we continue to receive Section 189, where workers are retrenched on a daily basis. We have also raised the issue at the level of government around the issue of the appointment of the business rescue. We are raising it. We think that this matter must also find an expression engagement executive director in Nedlac, because the business rescue, they are appointed through the amendment, through the Companies Act. They have no time frame. They run as they wish. I can give example about Lily Mine. Lily Mine has been under business rescue for 8 years. Optimum and Fontaine has been under business rescue for almost about 7 years. Today, Post Office was put under business rescue, is about to be liquidated. They don't care about the challenges of the economic crisis that we're facing in this country. It is on that basis we think that this matter of the business rescue Deputy Minister from DTI must find an expression in the engagement of government in relation to that matter. A frank discussion is needed on agent plan to turn local government around. On every indicator, it is in deep trouble, and yet we hear little beside PowerPoint presentation on what will be done to serve this key arm of service delivery. Municipalities are facing serious challenges. At the same time, some of the municipalities are not able to pay workers for 3 to 6 months. Some of the municipalities deduct the third-party claim and are not paying them where they're supposed to be paid. And you only become aware when a worker passes on. Families are expected to submit a claim. These are some of the issues that we think that Nedlac, from the history of 30 years in terms of engagement as social partners, we're able to resolve some of these issues. We can be able to resolve these issues. More needs to be done to revive our engagement on how we can ease the pain of the rising cost of living on workers and the economy, in line with the President Ramaphosa call to Parliament recently. A year ago, South Africa continued membership of the African Growth and Opportunities Act was in free for all. After a strategic intervention by government, business and labor, and our hosting of AGOA Forum in November, today the discussions is on how AGOA can be strengthened and workers' rights be placed on its agenda. And last year we had this AGOA in South Africa under the leadership of the former Minister of DTI, EP. I saw you there, Comrade EP. Thank you very much for coming. Similarly, efforts are needed to expedite the African Continental Free Trade Area, as well as to reinforce the industrial master plans if we are to ensure the reindustrialization of our economy and to win the war against the unemployment. Government will table the mid-term budget policy statement at Parliament in a few weeks. Whilst our engagement with Treasury on the budget are important, we need to elevate them to yield more meaningful interaction and to ensure the budget stimulates the economy, create jobs and capacitate the state. We are pleased that from the 1st of September, Labour struggled to reform our pensions and ensure workers' needs occupy the center of this debate have finally begun. Whilst the two-pot reforms do not include all that we proposed, they provide the foundation for the further engagement to ensure pensions support workers during their careers and in their retirement. We're very happy, comrade, and very happy, Minister, and with your team and social partners that today workers are able to withdraw part of their money from their own pension fund whilst they're still alive. We know there is a challenge that we have been criticized, particularly around the issue of the tax. We must say this, that we're engaging with Treasury. In the second round, this matter of tax will be resolved. We must do more in this collective to resolve the crisis of unclaimed pensions as well as to deal with the employers in both the public and private sector who fail to pay workers their third-party benefits. Minister, in particular in the security company, there are almost about 4,000 security companies who are not paying. They're deducting the money of the workers and they are not being paid to where they're supposed to. And we think that this matter is a criminal offense. It's a criminal offense. Working together with yourself and other departments, we should be able to find a solution in this matter. Leadership of government, some ill-informed critics of Nedlac are quick to dismiss it and often seek to undermine the Nedlac Act and bypass it when tabling legislation at Parliament. We hope this shameful behavior will be a thing of the past. Nedlac has a time and again prove its value to government in enriching important legislation from the Public Procurement Act, boosting local produced goods to tackling corruption, to the carbon tax finding and fair path for a just transition. It is Nedlac that forged consensus between government, business and labor on the historic national minimum wage, rising the wage of more than 6 million workers. Today, domestic workers were criticized when we implemented the national minimum wage in 2019. Were criticized by many people. Today, we're able to celebrate that domestic workers and farm workers, they are able to rate per hour 27.58 rand. And we are taking it up for review. Comrade Mukhalip, this is the time for review. We're coming as organized labor and community. We are coming for those ones. We'll be with them there. I didn't say anything. During COVID-19, it was this collective that helped to ensure 65 billion was released from the UIF, helping 5.7 million workers. The introduction of the SRD grant uplifting 8 million citizens and laying the foundation for the basic income grant, and oversee a highly successful health and safety campaign that saw more than 60% of the society vaccinated, saving millions of lives and jobs. Nedlac symbolized the value of social compact where all parties contribute towards common objective. We are here to help to ensure that the 7th administration is successful, and most importantly that we give hope to our people that the better life is coming. Better life is coming under the government of national unity. We hope that we will continue to provide us with As I conclude, allow us to pay a special tribute to two of our comrades here today, our former overall conveners, organized labor, Comrade Ephraim Patel and Begin Jalinjal. EP is a former General Secretary of SACTU and a former minister for 15 years in the Department of DTI. Comrade Begin Jalinjal is a former General Secretary of COSATU and with COSATU for almost about 30 years. We are pleased that you could join us today to share with us many of the lessons from your tenure. And we hope that you will continue to be with us, you will continue to advise us, in particular ourselves as labor. Lastly, allow us to thank the ED, the Executive Director, Lisa, in particular for her relentless effort to steer Nedlac and to whip all of us into a line and in shaping us, as well as her team for giving a social partner continuation support. You continue to tolerate our weaknesses. You continue to make sure that those who are lazy like myself, they do their work. On that note, I want to thank you very much. Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Thank you very much to Mr. Solipetwe, the Labour representative. I will now like to thank all the social partners as well as the Executive Director, and I'll ask you to please go back to your seats. Thank you very much for your inputs. Thanks for your presentations. Thanks for your reflections. And I would really like to echo the sentiments that have been shared by all the social partners around the commendable work that you have done, Executive Director. From a Nedlac perspective, you have attained a lot over the past few years, or over the past year. 91% of KPIs achieved, 78% of stakeholder satisfaction, and 84% of staff satisfaction. That deserves another round of applause. Thank you very much, colleagues. Let's now move to the last segment of this summit and today's session. And in introducing this last segment, I would like us to watch a short video that is going to be reflecting the highlights of the 30 years of Nedlac. If we can please play the video, thank you.
The birth of South Africa's democracy in 1994 ushered in a new era of hope for the country, and with it, plans on how to fast-track socio-economic development to the benefit of all. The National Economic Development and Labour Council was established in February 1995 to play a crucial role in shaping the nation's socio-economic landscape, and since its development has become an apex institution of social dialogue in South Africa. The Nedlac Act, passed by Parliament in 1994, set forth our mission: to promote economic growth, to ensure participation in economic decision-making, and enhance social equity. Nedlac is entrusted with the critical task of reviewing all proposed labour legislation and significant changes to the socio-economic policies before they are introduced in Parliament. As one of the first institutions formed after the 1994 elections, a great amount of hope and trust was put in Nedlac. Drawing on international best practices and lessons learned from the National Economic Forum and the National Manpower Commission, Nedlac brought together government, labour, business and community organizations to drive the participation of key stakeholders in decision-making on socio-economic issues. Over the past 3 decades, Nedlac has hosted several impactful summits, including the Presidential Job Summit in 1998 and 2018, the Financial Sector Summit in 2002, the Growth and Development Summit in 2003, and the Labour Relations in Durban in 2014. These events have focused on fostering collaboration and consensus building to address some of the country's most pressing challenges: unemployment, lack of inclusive economic growth and financial exclusion, poor wages and the working conditions facing many workers. Nedlac has played a crucial role in shaping labour market legislation that includes the Labour Relations Act, Basic Conditions of Employment Act, Employment Equity Act, Skills Development Act, National Minimum Wage Act, Unemployment Insurance Act, and associated codes and regulations. Through extensive negotiations between organised business, labour and government, legislation has been aligned with the rights enshrined in our Constitution and with international labour standards, reversing the exploitation faced by workers prior to democracy. Nedlac has also given birth to social partner bodies that promote dispute resolution and social dialogue, such as the Commission for Conciliation, Mediation and Arbitration, Proudly South African, and National Minimum Wage Commission. In times of challenge, Nedlac has brought parties together to respond to crises, ranging from the electricity crisis to the COVID-19 pandemic, amongst numerous others. The Temporary Employee Relief Scheme, launched during the COVID-19 pandemic, provided income support to millions, while the Social Compact created to support Eskom committed all social partners to ensure energy security in the country. Through social compacts and rapid response task teams, the social partners at Nedlac have assisted in finding solutions that benefit all South Africans. We ask that you join us in celebrating 30 years of Nedlac, a testament to what can be achieved when we collaborate in the common interest of a more inclusive and equitable South Africa. We particularly acknowledge past leaders from all 4 Nedlac constituencies who have worked tirelessly to advance social dialogue to achieve a better South Africa. We look forward to the years ahead, trusting that current and future leaders will continue carrying the batons passed on to them by our previous leaders of business, community, government, and labor. Let the good work of the past 30 years urge us to come together as we continue to shape a brighter future for all South Africans. Thank you. Dankie. Enkosi. Ngiyabonga. Ngiyalebua. Ngiyaleboga haholo. Nzankensa. Ke itumetse. Ngolebua.
Wow. It doesn't always feel like it, but I think we've really come a long way as a country, and Nedlac has been very instrumental in all our achievements. I'd like to now invite the following former overall conveners who will be giving messages of support to Nedlac in the celebration of the 30 years of Nedlac, and if they can please come to the stage as I call their names. Professor Raymond Parsons, the overall convener of business, or former overall convener of business. Ms. Lula Manare, former overall convener of community. Mr. Les Kettledas, former overall convener of government. And Mr. Peggy Njalinjali, former overall convener of labor. Thank you very much. So we are now going to receive the messages of support from the former overall conveners, who will only do their messages in just 5 minutes. And we are going to start with the former overall convener of business, Professor Raymond Parsons, who was the overall convener of organized business from 1998 to 2009. He was the Deputy CEO of BUSA and is currently a professor at the NWU School of Business and Governance. Professor Raymond Parsons, if you can please take the podium.
Well, good morning, everyone, and thank you for the opportunity and the privilege of sharing a few thoughts, all protocols observed for today. I don't think I can compress 30 years into 5 minutes, but I'll try. I think it's wonderful to be here today to see both old and new friends who are involved in Nedlac, and I would say that I think you must very much accept that the old guard is part of the vanguard of Nedlac. I think as the apex social institution of dialogue in South Africa, we're not only celebrating today, we're also contemplating where we are, the past, the present, and the future of Nedlac, as we've seen in some of the earlier remarks. Of course, over the years, and I've experienced it, so have my colleagues and my comrades here, that there have been great successes for Nedlac, which we've seen. We also know where there have been the identified failures, that it has not met what we had hoped. But this, in a sense, I think, is a reflection of the recent history of South Africa, that the ups and downs of our young democracy, some of the crises we've experienced, these have resonated within Nedlac itself. And I recall that my predecessor, by the way, I was overall convener from 1996 onwards, not 1998. My predecessor was someone called Bobby Gotzel, whom you know, and he's often said, referred to the extent to which South Africa over the years has often looked close to the edge of the abyss, but has always pulled back in time, always found the solutions. And that's, I think, been very much what Nedlac has also done from time to time. Sometimes it's got into a crisis, it looked over the edge, and it's pulled back. It's that the social partners have found each other. So I think if one looks at it on balance over time, that Nedlac's role, that its role is not to govern the country, but I think, as you've seen from what you've heard today, it has played a major role in helping to keep the country governable. And I would suspect that if Nedlac had not been co-founded at the time of our democracy, we would have had to invent it anyway. But in the time available, I just want to make 3 important points as part of my own message. The first is to refer to the late Archbishop Desmond Tutu, who once wrote that we in South Africa so often sell ourselves short, unquote. And he was referring to the largely peaceful transition which we had in 1994 to the democracy that we now enjoy. And it was to also remind us that the Nedlac legislation of November, I recall it very clearly, of November 1994, was one of the first pieces of legislation to be passed by the Democratic Parliament. And Nedlac was seen as providing over the years the socio-economic dimensions to the reconciliation and the nation building to which the new democracy was being committed. And I think the important point that I want to make is that as we review our past, our present, and the future in particular, that Nedlac's social dialogue role and its successes should not be sold short. And the failures, we must learn the lessons of those. The second point is looking through the prism of our socio-economic priorities, which we've heard about today. I think it's very important, as one thinks back, what are the lessons we've learned about our mandate as an organization, the leadership of the organization, and I think, as has been indicated, as big a job as we have discharged over the past 30 years, there lies a huge job ahead for Nedlac, for its social partners, and for government. And we've heard today also that there are plans to restructure and adjust the operation of Nedlac. It's quite clear, coming back to that well-known phrase, given the challenges we've identified, Nedlac has to be fit for purpose in the next few years, given these particular challenges. And the two most ingredients that are part of that, the two pillars on which making Nedlac fit for purpose would be, firstly, to be proactive and to be relevant. The third point I want to make briefly today, there's been much reference both outside and inside Nedlac about the need for a comprehensive social compact. I would say simply that, to me, reflecting on what Nedlac can offer, that a combination of the emergence of the Government of National Unity, to which reference has been made, to the Declaration of Intent, and in particular the updated National Development Plan, it should be creating space now for what I call, or what others have called, social compacting. Please note the plural. This is a house of many dimensions, and I think Nedlac remains the appropriate structure to find the common ground that you need in order to base successful social compacting. So to conclude, let me offer best wishes for Nedlac, for the future, to succeed, Nedlac and its social partners and its new participants that may join later. We must be relentlessly optimistic about the prospects for changing South Africa, but remain brutally realistic about the challenges that remain, that have been identified today, and how effective social dialogue can help to find and implement the solutions. Perhaps the best attitude, Chair, that has been summed up, given the challenges, given the institutions we want to have like Nedlac to succeed, a prominent historian once identified what he thought was the one key cross-cutting characteristic that shaped the fortunes of nations and institutions over many, many years. And I'm going to quote, because I think it's important that we leave today, having heard what we've heard, and will hear after I've spoken, where we go from here with the right mindset in tackling the challenges and the resources at our disposal. And he said this: in this world, the optimists have it, not because they are always right, but because they are positive. Even when wrong, they are positive. That is the way of achievement, correction, improvement, and success, of which we heard so much today. Educated, eyes-open optimism pays. That pessimism can only offer you the empty consolation of being right. So my message today is, let's tackle these challenges that have been identified, build on the achievements, learn the lessons of the failure, and ensure that effective social dialogue will make the necessary difference to the future of South Africa. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much to Professor Raymond Parsons. And now, Ms. Lulama Nare will be giving us her messages of support. She was the overall convener for the community from 2009 to 2012. She has served on a number of public and community-based boards, such as the Council at the Tshwane University of Technology and the Eastern Cape Rural Development Agency. Ms. Lulama Nare, if you can please come to the podium. Thank you.
Thank you, Program Director. To the Honorable Minister Math, she's my former boss. I was her board chairperson in the ECRDA. I believe she appointed me to be the chair for the next 3 years in that board. So here you are. You gained a very productive, active, capable leader in Comrade Math. I just wanted us to refocus maybe and reframe a bit. Don't worry, I'm a bit charismatic. My favorite music is rap, so. There's one thing that is always the elephant in the room, especially for South Africans. And I always want us to acknowledge it. Colonialization of a special type. Apartheid was colonialization of a special type. Because it identifies, it was very strategic. It took a lot from each South African to make it successful. It was institutionalized. It lies here in this room. It breathes. I breathe it. It smells. Congratulations to the Government of National Unity. I felt the stench. I woke up one day and with floodlights like these ones, I didn't know what was happening. The next thing, my dad is gone, the house is ransacked, and it's in the middle, if not the early mornings. And I'm not talking about 1946 or 1956, I'm talking about the 70s and the 80s when I was a teenager, which means some of us in South Africa, in this room and across the country, multiracially, we were part of the regime. My age group, if you are looking at me and you identify yourself as my age group, one of you chased me. I was on riot. You chased me with your baton. I look at you every day. You a young boy. That's the stench. It's the skeleton in the room of the South African history. So when you see community and you don't see the need to put them in the labor market chamber, you must know you're part of the stench because you don't understand that we belong everywhere. Just like we don't understand that women belong everywhere. Just like we don't understand if a person is on wheelchair, that he can still think. If he's blind, he can still, he's an intellectual, just like you. So Reserve Bank made some research and it's widely circulated. Business Times prints it, and then I see a cartoon from our own political cartoonist celebrating load shedding. I don't know how many days, but for me, officially, I'm 48 hours without load shedding. Literally 48 hours. So my son this morning woke up at 4 a.m. and said, okay, I'm going back to my routine. He's studying. 4 a.m. he was there sitting because there's electricity. It started in April. I have never enjoyed your days. So Zapiro is sitting there with the light, and I'm thinking, Zapiro, I'm not sitting with the light here. I'm sitting with the burden of unmaintained infrastructure. But I benefit from that infrastructure because I moved to a certain area. Because of apartheid, I don't know what is infrastructure. Because I didn't have. This floodlight flashed there because it was looking for my dad. It's dark in the township. They had to drag him out. We all are crying, we're busy. This was their infrastructure because it was dark in the township. So we don't understand what is infrastructure. And that is why we understand it better when you include us in the labor market chamber. And I'm calling for Nedlac. Your chambers, the community belongs in your chambers. Not because, you see, sometimes we mistaken this thing of being a community. I'm a qualified teacher. For a decade, I was teaching economics and business studies. For a decade. When you land there, Gqeberha, look for my school there, it's Warmer Heights, still producing top. So when you look at community, don't look at them and say, oh, maybe he's coming from a shack, he's just cold. You can see, no, these are intellectuals. They belong everywhere you are. Because when you are sitting as elites, you need to be reminded, because elites are not a homogeneous group. I'm not talking about white elites. I'm talking about South Africans who are elite, who walk into rooms and forget their communities they come from. That is why they will never develop the infrastructure. And then when the communities think about it, they say, okay, we're going to take the cable and we're going to have lights here. Because the elites, despite the fact that we are not a homogeneous group, when you sit there in those rooms in the different chambers, you agree. And then when you are given that chain to reign there, you forget that you are coming from that community that you still need to serve. So all of a sudden we must petition you to eradicate the toilet. We must petition you to understand what is a two-pot system. I saw the long queues and I said to myself, these people, the only thing they want right now is survival. That is why they are taking their money. In their lifetime. It's in their lifetime. Those workers that I saw there, they have families. Kosatu, you had a research on one worker. How many do they support? One working person in a family. How many people do they support? So don't come to us. That's why we didn't go to vote, some of us. Don't say to us, you're going to offer us one job for a family. It's already been existing for a long time, for decades. Because every person depends on that person who's working. That is why they were there in long queues in that two-pot, taking that small money just to make sure that they can alleviate the pressure that the high costs are bringing. So as I conclude, thank you, community constituency. For you not to think that you are less than. Kuban. Maskuben. And there's a problem. You are not a South African. Let's all go forward, united. But let's be aware that we are not a homogeneous group, that we are not going to say one thing. That is why it's going to be deeper, your social dialogue. That is why it's conflictual. That's why it takes years. Because you can't take 5 minutes to understand my struggle. And then you say, no, let's go, we're done now. No. Get into my shoes and then use your empathetic understanding to understand where I'm coming from. And then put back your elite shoe and say, okay, as an elite, this is how I'm going to drive this. To my former community constituency, Mr. Shezi, so glad to see you. Mam Laura, thank you for being my mentor. The first time I met her was Soli Mapaila. He said to me when he first saw me, he said, okay, you can't represent women, you must go and meet one woman there in the town, in the middle of the CBD in Johannesburg. And that's the first time. I met Mam Laura 20 years ago. She's part of my furniture. I think I'm also part of her furniture. Thank you very much, Mam Laura, for mentoring me. To my fellow overall conveners, Geduldas, I think my dad has something to say about your history. Thank you for seeing you. It's just one of those things. I know I interrupted him. When I came here, I was told to sit, I was supposed to sit close to you, Prof. But I wanted him to say something because I know he's going to say something. So I just sat there and he really passed and said, why are you? I'm like, I choose. I'm sitting here. Thank you very much. Congratulations, Liz. And well done. Aspeke Pambi. All of us. Bev?
Nyabonga, sis. Thank you so much. Thanks, sister. Nyabonga. Thank you so much for that message of support from Ms. Lula Manare. And now we move on. We now move on to the message of support from the former overall convener of government, Mr. Les Kettledas. Let's settle down, colleagues. Let's settle down. We have 20 minutes before we conclude the program. So Mr. Les Kettledas was the overall convener for government from 2008 to 2013. He has served as the NUMSA's National Secretary for Collective Bargaining, as well as the Deputy Director General in the Department of Labor for many years. Mr. Les Kettledas, please come and take the podium.
Well, thank you very much, Program Director, Honorable Minister, my Minister. Although I'm not in the department anymore, you're still my Minister now. His Excellency Deputy President Paul Mashatile, in his recorded address today to us, the ministers and other government leaders that are here, all protocols observed. I'm honored today to join in celebrating the past 30 years of Nedlac, of which 19 years of which I've spent in the structures of Nedlac. Guided by the time given to us by the program director, let me zoom into 3 areas. The genesis or evolution of Nedlac, highlights or reflections on the road Nedlac has traveled over the last 30 years, some thoughts on the future ahead, and Nedlac's role. Upon the democracy in our country in 1994, the first Minister of Labour, Tito Mboweni, led a tripartite delegation to the 81st session of the International Labour Conference in Geneva. This event marked the 75th anniversary of the creation of the ILO and 50 years of the adoption of the historic Declaration of Philadelphia in 1944. It was at this historic occasion that South Africa was being readmitted to the ILO after 30 years of absence because of its apartheid policies. Inspired by the significance of the event, Minister Mboweni remarked that as the 31st session of the conference charted its course, and I quote, "We in South Africa are mapping our own. The ILO principles of tripartism, social responsibility, and social justice are our compass," close quote. When we returned to the country with Minister Mbowene's leadership, we proceeded with a flurry of activities that led to the institutionalization of tripartism in our country. Indeed, in establishing Nedlac, we went a step further, ensuring that organizations of community and development interests are also formally and equally involved, as we can see today. In the Nedlac founding declaration, the social partners identified three defining challenges facing the country to be, firstly, sustainable economic growth, secondly, greater social equity, and thirdly, increased participation by all major stakeholders in economic decision-making. Unfortunately, 30 years later, these challenges remain with us. For a variety of reasons, though, it is not for the lack of effort on the part of social partners represented at Nedlac. It is commendable that most, if not all, significant socio-economic legislation has passed through the Nedlac structures over the years. And here I wish to extend appreciation and gratitude to the ministers and the conveners that served in those various chambers and at the other structures of Nedlac. The lead departments, Department of Trade and Industry, today known as DTIC, Public Works, Finance and Labor, and the individual conveners that were responsible for the trade and industry development, the Public Finance and Monetary Policy Chamber and the Labor Chambers respectively. These chambers are the engine room of Nedlac. This is where the hard work is done, where tough negotiations take place, tough discussions take place. And the role of the lead departments was crucial, and the conveners of those departments, as they played an important role in internalizing also the work of Nedlac in their departments and indeed in government. As we tabled and considered socio-economic policy with our social partners, the discussions were sometimes robust and debates often fierce. But where deadlocks occurred, another mechanism in Nedlac was called into action, and that was a committee of principles. And I think the committee of principles have a critical role to play in the affairs of Nedlac. And they are always ready to step in and assist in dispute resolution amongst the social partners. As we review Nedlac's achievements or challenges over the past 30 years and its future role, I think it's also incumbent upon us to give attention to the wider dissemination of Nedlac work at the provincial and local government levels. Promoting or fostering social dialogue at the subnational level could support more effective policy formulation and implementation, thus leading to improved development outcomes in our country. Nedlac has not been a waste of time or resources, as some distractors may say. It is heartening to see reports showing that the satisfaction of stakeholders in the work of Nedlac averages 73%, and I think it was 78% on the slide. On the future of Nedlac going forward, I fully agree with the sentiments shared by others that we need Nedlac to continue to succeed in these uncertain and difficult times. The structures, including the chambers, the management committee, the executive council, need to be strongly capacitated. The Nedlac conveners need to be properly mandated. It's so essential in those chambers that conveners and delegations of social partners come to those discussions in the chambers as mandated representatives. Similarly, the Committee of Principals also need to continue to play a role in unblocking difficulties, logjams, or resolving disputes where they arise. Fortunately, the social partners have seen to it that there are moves to make Nedlac a fit-for-purpose entity that is also agile. And a number of speakers had raised the issue also. I wish to join in congratulating and acknowledge the progress made on the revised Nedlac Bill, the Constitution, and protocol for considering issues at Nedlac. In conclusion, I wish to pay tribute to the government leaders over the past years. These include the former presidents and deputy presidents who addressed and chaired the Nedlac annual summits. And I see now there will be a slight amendment that the deputy president that was always supposed to chair the Nedlac summits, that will now change. But they will always be called upon to address the Nedlac summits. I wish to thank the lead ministers and government representatives who engaged the work of Nedlac and supported it in its approach to deliver on its mandate. I also wish to thank the overall conveners of the social partners for the role they have played in steering Nedlac, Professor Parsons, Ms. Nare, and Becky, former Minister of DTI, Ibrahim Patel, was also an overall convener. The success of Nedlac over these past 30 years would not have been achieved without the industrious and hard-working Secretariat under the different executive directors. I know that the Secretariat, the coordinators from the Secretariat in the chambers were critical in the work of those chambers. And many of them have over the years put in very hard work with difficult social partners sometimes to make those chambers function successfully. And it's because of you that today we're able to truly celebrate the countless efforts to turn the dream of social dialogue in our participatory democracy into a concrete reality. And with that, I thank you very much, and I wish Nedlac prosperous next 30 years forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Les Kettledas. Now let's receive our final message of support from the overall convener of organized business, Mr. Begin Chalinchali, who was the convener. So now we are going to receive our last message of support from the former overall convener of organized labor. He is business, he's at ESCOM, so that is business, and he's doing a very good job. He has managed to end load shedding. He was the former overall convener for organized labor from 2009 to 2023, and during these periods, he was the Deputy General Secretary and Deputy General Secretary of COSATU and General Secretary of COSATU at that period, Mr. Begin Chalinchali. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Program Director. You are not alone in misrepresenting who I am. When I went to the ILO for the last time, I was listed under business. So maybe that's where the future lies. Thank you very much for the opportunity. Let me pass my greetings to the ministers and Minister of Labour, the Deputy President and the ILO Director, all protocols observed. I was wondering as to why it was me to speak on behalf of former overall conveners. But I understood now that maybe they wanted to allow those who came second, because I look at Prof, he was not the first, and I look at Lulama, she was not the first, and etc. as it goes on from business, not it was the same, not the original ones. I must say that things have changed, looking to where Nedlac is. In the first Nedlac summit that we had, business was almost all white. And I look at them today, they are almost all, yeah, you can see. And the same with government, that all your support staff ministers are now our members. So sometimes when you prepare something and you keep it a secret, we know before you deliver it, because our members are the one who types all these messages. So that's our contribution. So even in community, as they have some gripe, and you can hear from them, they said they are gatekeepers, but we deploy Comrade Lulama, who was a member of SACTO at that time, to say, go to this community that seems to be problematic in their complaint, to be in all chambers, but we also said we must send Pat Horn to look after them. That's why she's sitting in here. So in all these constituencies, you'll have the print of labor. But all the overall, all the executive directors of Nedlac are coming from the trade unions. So when you appreciate the good work, remember, these are the workers that we are donating to them. And we're also giving some ministers to say ministers must come from labor, and we can then give other ministers to business. But 30 years of unbroken services of shaping and reshaping the social dialogue in itself is a milestone. The Nedlac records speak for itself. So I'm not going to say what Nedlac has achieved over the 30 years. Books have been written, libraries, you go to library, you'll find the work of the Nedlac. Even in social media, you can just click there and set Nedlac. It will just emerge how Nedlac has worked over the last 30 years. So it speaks volumes in terms of what we have done. In fact, many countries envy Nedlac. They are here, they are learning, they are coming to Nedlac. Most countries in Africa comes here to learn about social dialogue, being the last in achieving the freedom, but being the first in terms of social dialogue, and we fully understand that one. I must hasten to say, though, that in the invitation that I received, we were told we were going to speak for 3 minutes. So I thought, what will I say in the 3 minutes? Because it's impossible to speak about Nedlac achievement in 3 minutes. So I thought just the best thing is to recognize those I think that have made contribution in the embryonic stage, in the infant and the teething stage of Nedlac, ranging from the President Mandela, John Komomo, Tito Mboweni, and David Brink, who signed that Nedlac agreement. Going to Boki Porter, business will remember Boki Porter, Leslie Boyd, Patrice Musipe, Semu Zwenyane, Godsell, Lambret, Andre, Bazi Mashilowa, Cunningham, Ngugana, Herbert Mkize, Enoch Kotongwane, Khalima, and I'm mentioning Khalima as the president. He was serving in our chambers. Many of these people, Enoch Kotongwane, the Minister of Finance, was serving in the chamber in Nedlac. Philip Dexter, Les, oh, by the way, Les Mkalipi, we deploy. You can see where we strategically deploy these people. Tony Ehrenreich, Zwelinzi Mavav, and Ibrahim. If time allows, I will tell them story about them. But seeing that we don't have time, I just want to mention 3 groups in passing that we, in many times when we celebrate, we don't talk about them. The first group is the general worker in Nedlac, those that clean Nedlac, those that provide us tea, those that make transport to fetch us in the airport. When we talk about the achievement, we don't speak to them, about them. The second one is about the support staff of the constituencies, those that they may call, that they ensure that there is a quorum, that copies are made and venues are reserved. The third one is the one that I belong to, the overall conveners, the invisible hand of the overall conveners. In many instances, you will not know what they've been achieved, their contributions. Now, we regard them to be the oil in the engine, that if the engine has to kick in all cylinders, there's a work that is done by the invisible hands, which I term them the overall conveners. Now, we were asked to say, what advice could you give to the future overall conveners? And I'm not talking about the current one. I'm talking about the future. The first thing is that the overall convener respect one another. They're coming from different constituencies, but they respect one another. Secondly, they respect the position of other constituencies, no matter how it sounds disastrous, ridiculous, and all those issues. They respect it. They will tell you in the passage with I Maringatini Petala. But they will respect it and treat it because they understood that there's a mandate. What you are coming up with, you got a constituency that says you must present those issues. But they also understand, overall conveners, that the fight in the chambers, in the boardrooms, in the task teams remains there. You fight in the meeting. Sometimes the temperature is high. You come out of that meeting, you are smiling, and you still call yourselves comrades, and you are able to talk as human beings. But more important about the overall conveners is the commitment to find a solution. Whenever they negotiate, they know that the work that they have to produce has to advise either a certain minister or a cabinet. So they got a commitment to produce an outcome that is sound, that got quality in dealing with those things. But lastly also, that every argument and proposal they have to make must be supported by research, facts, and evidence. So that's how they have managed these 30 years. Even somebody talk about a consensus. They had a consensus to agree, but they also a consensus to disagree. They disagree among themselves, but with respect, even on issue, they don't see eye to eye. Now, without them, my argument, and without the solid overall conveners, Nedlac will not be where it is. I just, in conclusion, to make few things that the overall conveners agitated to their leaders. The first one is now a very unpopular one. The overall conveners decided to make a recommendation that there should be no sitting allowance in Nedlac. All other structures in a country, there's a sitting allowance, and you can see that people don't miss a meeting because there's a sitting allowance. There's no sitting allowance in Nedlac. All of you here, you are not going to get anything for coming, but your commitment. So there's no sitting allowance. That's the first proposal they make, which was then accepted by their leaders. The second achievement for me by the contribution and the guidance of the overall conveners was the preparation and outcomes of the Growth and Development Summit. If less you'll remember, TM was the president and he wanted the outcome. Prof, you know, and the office of TM, I think there's no president that his staff is so afraid of the president. TM was one of that president, and they keep calling Dex and says, why are the conclusion? The president want to have conclusion. And one of the last 2 days, we end up the meeting 2 a.m. in the morning. EP was in Geneva. I tried to call him. Hey, EP, he was nowhere to be found, and people were crying, and Dexter was saying, Labour, please agree. And we said, no, can't agree on this thing. But eventually we agree, Growth and Development Summit. The third one was the South African response to the global financial crisis. Normally, big business says they don't have time. But when the crisis of finances was there, captain of the industry, directors were available to meet and say, let's meet. We can't have these things. Khalima was the president at that time. The overall conveners pushed them. You have to come to the meeting. This was work that was done, if I'm not mistaken, in 2 weeks, 10 days, we produced a response to the global financial crisis. The importance of that agreement is what led to what in the ILO was called a jobs pact. It's a South African initiative. It ended up in the ILO, and it was termed the jobs pact. The fourth one was the national minimum wage, which was one of the call in the Freedom Charter, 1955. This was driven by the deputy president at that time, then the president now. And we normally said we don't have time, particular people from business and government. They said they have no time. The deputy president said we are going to create time. If the deputy president can have time, it means minister will have time and business will have time. We're meeting in Nedlac after hours, but we're even meeting on a weekend, if people will remember. The Deputy President meeting on Saturday, 9 o'clock, everybody will be there, we're there. A very difficult negotiation. I remember at one time, the Labour person walked out of the meeting in Pretoria, Kalipi calls me and said, hey, your reps here has walked out of the meeting. And you must come. And said, can I send somebody? He says, no, come yourself. Nobody to deploy in here. Good achievement. The rapid COVID-19 response was one, in my view, where Nedlac really did a good work. They were meeting almost 24/7. Of course, not the whole day and night, but whenever they were called, they were available. When they were resisting, it was the overall convener who said, "You must go. You cannot make yourself unavailable." And the economic reconstruction and recovery plan was one of the achievements that we have made in Nedlac. But the one that I like most, and a recovery plan, was one of the achievements that we have made in Nedlac. But the one that I like most, and I like this because sometimes there are contradictions, is about the labor courts. The candidate judges are recommended in the main through the JRC by the overall conveners. They shortlist who should be the judge. They engage before even the interview, and they agree with the labor court judge president who should be the judges. And I'm mentioning this because sometimes the judges make a decision that is not in your favor, and people start swearing at this judge. And you said, "Oh God, but this judge was nominated by us. This is our judge," as the overall conveners in that case. But not everything was good, and we took a decision, Prof, to establish the minimum labor council, because government was becoming a little bit problematic, and EP and Prof says, "No, can we establish something where we can speak alone without government?" So we established the Millennium Labor Council. In my conclusion to this future overall conveners is normally this quote, I don't know who wrote it, that rivers never go back, reverse. So you must live like a river, forget the past, focus on the future, and always be positive. But to the Nedlac Nedlac executive, who, by the way, I will not now tell who is coming from, because you might have an attitude to her when she puts some suggestion, but it's obvious where she might be coming from, is that do what is right, not what is easy, and not what is popular. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much to Mr. Peginjalinjali, former overall convener of organized business, organized labor. Okay, it's been a long day. Okay, I'm going to ask that you all please remain on stage, and I'm going to ask Minister Meth to come back to the stage, please, for the honoring of the former overall conveners. If you can please come back on stage, and then I'm going to ask Mayor Ruth Mufokeng, who was one of the original employees of Nedlac, to please come to the stage as well. I'm not sure if she's here. Mayor Ruth Mufokeng. Oh, but no, I'm not releasing them. No, I'm not releasing them. I think we can be here, Mayor Ruth, and I'm going to ask all the former overall conveners to stand as well. Mayor Ruth, you can come. I'm also going to ask, I think if everyone can just come on stage, I think it will be better, so that the minister can just hand over the plaques to everyone. So let me also invite former Minister of the DTIC, Minister Ibrahim Patel, Mr. Virgil Seafield, as well as Mr. Sizwe Shezi. If you can come to the stage. And Minister, you are now going to be, maybe you can just step forward. You are now going to be handing over the plaques. Can we please, which plaque do we have first? Mayor Ruth is going to be handing you the plaques. Minister, if you can come, former minister, if you can please come and join the current minister to receive your plaque, as well as former Minister of DTIC, Ibrahim Patel, if you can please come next to the minister to receive your plaque. And if we can please have a photo. Thank you very much. Let's capture that photo. Ah, okay. So do you need to take another one, or is that okay? No, that's okay. Is that okay? Okay. All right. Okay, so it must just, okay. Yeah. And Minister, please don't go back to your seat. If you can just remain. Thank you very much. So you have taken that photo. Is that okay? All right. Okay, Mr. Les Kettledas, if you can please come and join the... If we can please capture this photo. Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Les Kettledas, and Ms. Lula Manare, if you can please be next.
Done very well.
Oh, goodness, it's really lovely.
Okay.
It was absolutely brilliant. Thanks, Prof. Yeah.
Let's get together and have lunch one of these days.
I'd love that. I'd love that.
Yeah, we go. Right. And a big smile.
Thank you very much. And next is going to be Mr. Pegin Chalinchali. If you can please step forward. Thank you, Mr. Njalinjali. And next is going to be Professor Raymond Parsons. Professor Raymond Parsons.
Bigger smile, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Parsons. And next is going to be Mr. Virgil Seafield. Thank you, Mr. Seafield. Let's capture that photo.
And again, thank you.
And last but definitely not least, Mr. Sizwe Shezi. Mayor Ruth? Sorry. We're just gonna take a photo. Okay, thank you so much. And now, if we can please just stand for a photo opportunity of everyone. Ms. Mayor Ruth, please.
Could you all come down? I don't want my ministers to try this once.
Yes. Yeah, I think, Minister, if you can please just be at the center. Can I please ask the deputy ministers to come and join as well? Deputy ministers for an overall photo opportunity.
Maybe even turn sideways a little bit, so like this, facing this way, and then those faces. Exactly. And then come closer together. Sorry. So you're a very large group. That's perfect. Right. I'm going to have to stand here because. Here we go.
Fantastic. Say fuzzy pickle. Say
Great. Now, please don't go back to your seats. I'm going to ask all of you to come to the right for the cutting of the cake. Minister, you're going to be leading us. Cutting of the cake, and I'm going to ask Tulani, please come and join us for the cutting of the cake. Kes Kuvadia, as well as Ntate Soli. Can I please ask you to join us for the cutting of the cake? Lisa Seftel. Who else am I supposed to invite? That's it, ne? Okay, the cake that we are going to be cutting, or the minister is going to be cutting, is for the birthday celebration of Nedlac. Nedlac is celebrating its 30 years. There is a lot of noise this side, but it's fine. I'm going to try and talk over it. Nedlac was formerly, as I talk, Minister, you are going to be cutting the cake. Nedlac was formally established on the 18th of February 1995. However, this is its 30th years of existence, and in line with celebrating 30 years of freedom and democracy, we are celebrating its 30th year in this annual summit. And to do so, we are going to invite the Minister of Employment and Labor to cut the cake, which all of you will share. Minister, if you can lead us with the cutting of the cake to celebrate the 30 years of Nedlac's existence. It's 30 years, it has to be big. Absolutely, thank you. That is brilliant. A round of applause, please, ladies and gentlemen.
Sorry, one more time, because we went into the shot. There we go, that's great. There we go, big smile. And then everyone look at the camera, please, for a big smile. So could you go out just a tiny bit? That's it, great. Should I go first? No, it's fine. No. Sorry, it's off balance. Just go a little bit more. There we go, perfect. Right. Say cheese.
No, they must say Nedlac, not cheese. Okay, thank you so much. If you can all go back to your seats, please. We can now go back to our seats. Yeah. Thank you very much. And now to do the vote of thanks, I'm going to ask Deputy Minister of Department of Employment and Labor, Ms. Phumzile Mgcina. Deputy Minister. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, can we please put our hands together for the Deputy Minister as she gives the vote of thanks.
Thank you very much, Program Director, the Deputy President, Paul Mashatile, our Minister, Makhosazana Meth, Deputy Minister of DCIC, Zugo Kodlimpi, former Minister of DCIC, leaders of business leadership in South Africa, Deputy Minister, Sibia Kosasu, Secretary General and Executive Director of Nedlac, and all protocol is observed. Thank you very much for this opportunity, Program Director. I will not say much, as the Minister has charted the way of the department and Nedlac in reshaping and imaging our future of shared partnership in addressing a complex challenges facing our country. South Africa is a land of opportunities. Its potential amplified by its strategic global position, cultural diversity, and its rich mineral resources. Yet our economy has been grappling to expand to an anticipated pace. Over the past 5 years, the growth rate has been average of 0.8%, leading to a challenging labor market given our current high unemployment rate of 33.5%, as the Deputy President has mentioned. The key to economic growth lies in allowing the private sector a significant role in infrastructure capital projects and adjusting investments towards productive sectors, as this approach should be blended with emerging technological trends like generative artificial intelligence, augmented reality, and immersive 3D technology. Those tools that are used by industrialized nations and are leveraging to enhance their economic productivity while keeping their populace at the heart of it. Minister, we find ourselves in a time of technology explosion where government, society, and business must work together to preserve the existing jobs while creating new ones. This era is introduced roles previously played unmanaged, all aimed to accelerate productivity in areas such as infrastructure transformation, rail development, and spatial planning. Therefore, this summit, I believe it holds a great significance as we commemorate Nedlac's crucial role over the past 30 years in shaping our economy and labor markets. It emerged during a period when the world was grappling with a debt crisis that exposed vulnerability and prompt structural adjustment and economic reforms under the international financial institution guidance. Our country was not immune to these challenges. This situation allowed Nedlac to play a vital role in rallying societal stakeholders to invention to a future shaped by both business interests and governmental policies. The time has come for us to take further actions to advance the frontiers of social progress, much like in the 90s when our country experienced a rapid growth and integration into the global economy, driven by markets liberalization and foreign investment, followed by the commodities boom, high growth rates, and the subsequent economic meltdown. South Africa played a key role with business and government at the center of the social compact. The pressing question that for Nedlac we must address: how can they reshape their role in the current context of persistent unemployment, poverty, and climate crisis, generative AI, and inequality? This is reflected in the theme of this summit, celebrating 30 years of social dialogue and planning for the future. This is the challenge that government, organized labor, and business must confront in the wake of the global inflation and the shrinking labor markets, in the wake of the technological development and a global call for phasing out of the carbon economy. With that in mind, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to thank everyone here for their support, as well as our key stakeholders who are committed to growing the economy. Today, Minister, we are pledged to continue building our economy through a strong partnership between the private and the business sector. As the Minister has alluded that working together, we can build a capable development state central addressing our challenges. Not forgetting to mention that as a department working together with all our social partners representing the Nedlac, we have a responsibility to continue protecting the gains of workers that have been made over the past 30 years. We have to make sure that workers are protected that while we are creating new jobs that needs new skills in the world that is changing, and also the reskilling of workers will need to be factored in the way that we appreciate the realities that in the modern world that we are facing currently, and we must make sure that we protect the jobs that we are currently having. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for the ongoing support of the department and the Nedlac. You deserve a well done for the sterling work, as the Minister has said to you. And all of partners that are here, we must continue work together to make sure that we change the situation that we are facing, more especially when it comes to unemployment. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
No, Program Director, they're just asking for a picture.
For a photo. Oh, okay. Okay. All right, thank you. Thank you very much. Thanks, Deputy Minister, for that vote of thanks. Ladies and gentlemen, we have already gone 15 minutes over the scheduled time, and for that I apologize. We have now come to the end of the program, but before we close, please allow me to just acknowledge in absentia some of the former overall conveners that could not be here in person: Mr. Bobby Gotzel, Mr. Dumsane Mtalane of Community, Ms. Lorraine Lotta of Business, and Mr. Sipopijana of Business, as well as to acknowledge the late Professor Eddie Webster, who passed away earlier this year and was the champion of Nedlac, and he contributed significantly to achieving or to advising Nedlac over the years. And with that, I would like to invite you all to join us for lunch, which is going to be served outside. And thank you for your time, thank you for your attention. But before everyone leaves, we need minister, deputy ministers, former overall conveners, current conveners, ED, DG of Department of Labor, representatives from business, labor, community, and government. Who else have I forgotten? That's everybody. VIPs. I think if you can all move to the Nedlac banner on my left-hand side for photo opportunities, please. So as everyone goes to have lunch, and thank you very much for your time, thanks for your attention, thanks for your attendance. Can I please ask all of those people to move to the left of the stage for the group photos? Thank you. Oh yeah. Thank you very much. I'm not doing this again.